Chapter 816. Chu Tian had made a mistake. It couldn't be said that it was a mistake. The plan itself was not a problem. He would first cut off the food of the large tribes, and when they were begging for a miracle, the fox tribe would take this chance to release the news of the mysterious human merchant. When these natives heard that the Minotaurs in the Minotaur Valley, because of trading with this human merchant, not only did nothing happen to them during the famine, but they even ate and drank, while every day they would definitely go to the Minotaur Valley outside to investigate the situation. Who didn't know that the Minotaurs were the stupidest and were the first to starve to death? Now that they were eating and drinking, how could the other tribes not be jealous? The human merchant was very resourceful. No matter how much food they needed, they would be able to supply it. On one hand, he could supply them with high-quality food, and on the other hand, he could cut off the other food sources. These locals would be tied down by Chu Tian in the end, and Chu Tian's goal would be achieved. The problem now was that when Chu Tian had just started the first step of his plan, and before he could even start the second step, Dolores had already rushed over. There was a very urgent piece of news that over 10 tribes were working together to attack Green City. The situation is not good this time, Dolores said with a face of worry. It's like we've smashed our own feet with a rock. No, it's not right. Chu Tian knit his brows and thought about it for a few minutes. This can't be right. These tribes normally don't interact with each other and are suspicious of each other. How could they form an alliance in just 2-3 days? This doesn't make sense. Dolores had already noticed this suspicious point. Although Green City's gnomes are very weak, they're not something these normal tribes would dare challenge. I also suspect that there is a mastermind behind this. Chu Tian nodded. There was no need to doubt it. This was certain. Chu Tian had already been in the Fox clan for a week, and he already had a good understanding of Green City. This city's manager and founder were all gnomes. Although the gnomes were not as strong as the elves, they could be considered one of the most knowledgeable races in the forest. The gnomes were different from the wood elves who had no desires. The gnomes were strict by nature and had a strong thirst for knowledge. Therefore, the gnomes had high attainments in source energy arrays, alchemy, and talismans. The reason Green City could maintain its rich state for several hundred years was because the gnomes' production had brought enough wealth to the city. The gnomes' equipment could be said to be very elite, and adding in the gnomes' talismans and traps, as well as various defensive facilities, they could definitely make Green City a city that was hard to conquer. If my guesses aren't wrong, the person behind this is most likely still in Green City. These locals can't conquer Green City, so they can only work together. Chu Tian asked Dolores, "With your intuition, who do you think is the most suspicious?" Dolores said without even thinking, "The shaman religion or the undead religion." Chu Tian said with a slight nod, "We need to make a trip to Green City." "Why are we going to Green City?" "Of course it's to see the acting city lord." Chu Tian was an outsider, and it was hard for outsiders to enter Green City, so he needed the Fox clan's help. Dolores and Chu Tian shared a common interest, so of course she agreed without even thinking about it. The demonic god religion had a bit of influence in Green City. Although the Fox clan was small, the Fox people had good brains, so they had a few stores in the city that mainly sold materials. Chu Tian disguised himself as a Fox person and was led by Dolores, so it was much easier for them to enter Green City. Green City had already been established for 500 years. This was not considered too old in the Forest of Chaos, and this city had always been under the control of the Green Religion. The Green Religion was a religion of the elves, mainly believing in the forest god. The gnomes at their peak had over 1 million people, so they could be considered quite a large power. In the last few decades, the Green Religion had quickly declined. The newly risen druid warriors, necromancers, and shaman sorcerers ran amok in Green City. They were already a serious threat to the gnomes. Although the gnomes were still the masters of Green City in name, they had already been divided. They were hindered by these 3 religions, and adding in the several decades of chaos, the influence of the Green Religion had quickly declined. Chu Tian was currently standing in front of Green City. This is Green City? It really is a bit different from what I imagined. The cities in the Forest of Chaos were not something the Southern Summer Country could compare to. Even the Southern Summer Imperial City could not compare to a tenth of this place. When Chu Tian saw Green City, his first impression was it was grand, natural, and picturesque. Most of the cities in the Forest of Chaos did not have city walls because there was no meaning in having a city wall in a place like this. Although the Green City in front of him did not have city walls, because it was built in a vast mountain range, the mountain range surrounding it was a natural city wall. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, it would have been hard to imagine that such a city would suddenly appear in the rugged and precipitous mountains. Green City did not have a lot of people, but it was several times larger than the Southern Summer Imperial City. The entire city was scattered among the mountains, so the distribution was very interesting. If one looked at it from a macro perspective, it would look like a trapezoid shape. There were many scattered castles, some at the foot of the mountain, some at the waist of the mountain, and some at the top of the mountain. Sometimes there were two castles in the middle that were separated by a several hundred-meter-deep mountain stream that was only connected by a drawbridge. There were countless open areas in the middle of the mountain range, which were large amounts of planting and breeding areas. There was a main peak in the middle of the mountain range. It was originally a towering mountain, but the top half of it had been excavated and turned into a giant white castle. Half was a mountain and the other half was a city. Sitting at the peak of the mountain range, surrounded by clouds, it was like a city in the sky. This was a very special place. The city built by the gnomes was completely different from the humans. In the large cities that humans lived in, the streets were orderly and the tall buildings were scattered. They were tightly packed together and were surrounded by city walls. Green City's appearance was completely different. The entire city was made up of over 100 large and small castles, and each castle could be considered a small city. The castles surrounded the mountains in layers, forming a trapezoid shape. Although they were scattered very loosely, they were still very orderly. If a human city was a flat structure, then this city would be a three-dimensional structure. The entire Green City was perfectly integrated with nature. These cities that were carved out of the mountains or built out of thin air looked disorderly on the surface, but each one of Green City's buildings was very unique. The spiritual energy here was very rich, and there were countless spirit veins gathered here, giving birth to countless heaven and earth treasures, but there were no fierce beasts. This was very rare in the Forest of Chaos. In this endless mountain range, it was unknown how many precious mines were hidden. It was definitely a good place for long-term development. Ha ha ha. Chu Tian laughed a few times. A city in the mountains, a mountain in the city, a forest surrounding a river surrounding a mountain range, and a mountain range surrounding a city. My city looks very good, but I see that the city has not even been developed by 10%, and the entire mountain range has not even been developed by 2%. I'm prepared to connect all of this together and create a large city-state that can hold several tens of millions of people, making it the largest city in the Forest of Chaos. What do you think? Sir City Lord, you seem to be happy too early. Dolores rolled her eyes and disagreed with Chu Tian's grand ambitions. Don't forget, your city will be captured by a group of people. It might even turn to ashes in a few days. Those locals? Hey, when would Great Master Chu Tian place them in his eyes? But speaking of this city was indeed better than imagined. The city the gnomes used 500 years to build had been taken advantage of by Chu Tian in the end. Not only was this place rich in spiritual energy, it was also in the center of the Forest of Chaos, making it the most suitable base for miracle commerce. If Chu Tian could gain a foothold here, he could use this place as the center and allow the company to expand. At that time, the Dragon's Ridge, the Titan Mountain Range, the Savage Highlands, the Eternal Forest, or the distant Western Sea, or the dark underground world, would Chu Tian properly deal with them? The Forest of Chaos had the potential to become an empire. Of course, the premise was that they could unify this area, which was not an easy matter. Let's enter the city. Green City did not just have a natural mountain barrier. There were also many natural passages that could be used to enter Green City from all directions. Dolores led Chu Tian through a passage covered in white moonlight stones. Not only were there shrubs and green grass on both sides, there were also many tall trees. What shocked Chu Tian the most was that there was a large tree that looked like a human. It had a pair of thick arms and a giant spear in its hands. It was like a 10-meter tall giant guard that was guarding the passage without moving. "What is this?" Chu Tian was a bit surprised. This thing looked like a tray ant, but it was definitely not a tray ant, because Chu Tian could feel that this thing did not have a will and was a giant puppet life form. "This is the Green Protector," Dolores explained. "The Green religion studied the remains of the ancient war trees and finally cultivated a powerful life form. 100 years ago, Green City was filled with these powerful warriors, but after being attacked several times, they were all lost. In the last 10 years, there have been several disasters, and a large number of them have died, so there aren't many left." Chu Tian continued walking with Dolores. There were at least 3 layers of barriers protecting this canyon. There was a reason why Green City could stand in this place. With these green protectors and the defenses of the passage, Green City could stop large forest powers from invading. As long as it wasn't a giant like the Eternal Forest, Green City could protect itself. Of course, that was the previous Green City. The current Green City was very weak, and it was very bad with internal and external troubles. If it wasn't like this, why would the gnomes surrender to the Eternal Forest? The Elven Council was really a group of wooden heads, not wanting this good place that was delivered to their door. In the end, Chu Tian had picked up a large bargain. Chapter 817. Chu Tian temporarily stayed in the Fox Clan's tribe. The little fox lived the life of an emperor, and each Fox Clan treated it as a spiritual god. The little fox would teach its followers demonic techniques from time to time, and there were some demonic techniques that even it couldn't use, but these memories had been deeply engraved in its soul since it was born. The followers became even more fanatical. Everyone could see that the little fox was still in its infancy, but it was certain that it was the descendant of the demonic god religion. Just based on this, the little fox had the qualifications to guard the temple and accept the worship of the followers. Chu Tian collected information on Green City while understanding the Fox Clan's strength. The Fox tribe was not weak. They only had a population of 20,000, but they had more than a dozen true spirit realm experts. When he heard this number from the high priest's mouth, Chu Tian was instantly shocked. This was just too exaggerated. There were several true spirit cultivators in 20,000 people, and this was only a small-scale tribe. Then wouldn't there be over 1,000 true spirit cultivators in a large forest city with several million people? Although the Forest of Chaos had rich spiritual veins, and it was easy to find high-level sacred herbs and precious herbs, so the people that grew up here were not people the southern summer barren lands could compare to, this ratio was still a bit too shocking. The high priest explained, "No need to be shocked. My clan believes in the demonic god, and the entire clan uses their power of faith to cultivate, so our cultivation base grows faster than normal cultivators." There was a difference between followers and cultivators. The cultivation techniques these followers cultivated were related to their faith. Faith itself was a kind of wonderful power that could support cultivation techniques. The stronger their faith, the faster their cultivation speed. However, this had a very clear flaw. After becoming a follower, it was very hard to cultivate any other attributed cultivation technique. Each true spirit realm expert had the qualifications to become a priest. Dolores was one of the demonic god's priests. This demonic god's priest had the strength of the peak first true spirit layer, but she could only use her demonic techniques to control summons in the peak 9th awakened soul layer. Even if she could summon several of them, it would not be easy for her to fight against experts of the same level. After all, the Fox clan was not strong, and they couldn't cultivate any attributed cultivation techniques, so the development of their source spirits was very low. Their battle strength could not compare to experts of the same level. This meant that in this Fox clan tribe, although there were many high cultivators, their battle strength was not that strong. However, the demonic god's followers were not only summoners, they were also strong beast tamers. These demonic gods taming demon beasts were incomparable. In the surrounding forest, other than the 100 spiritual monkeys, there were also several high-level demon beasts. There were close to 1,000 of them, and they were all level 2 demon beasts. It was because of the defense of these demon beasts that the Fox clan was not swallowed by the forest of chaos. Otherwise, how could they have survived until today? Chu Tian was very interested in taming demon beasts. The little fox could directly control the mind of the demon beasts, but the little fox's control was only temporary. Although it was quick and easy to use, it could be interrupted or dispelled. These Fox clan members could not directly tame demon beasts like the demonic god race, but they could temporarily tame demon beasts. Then they would use the secret techniques and potions developed by the demonic god religion to brainwash the demon beasts, making them submit bit by bit. Although it took a long time and consumed quite a bit of resources, once the taming was successful, these tamed beasts would belong to them for a long time. Chu Tian preferred the second method in comparison. Miracle Commerce lacked an air force the most right now. Was it easy to train an air force from scratch? If he could solve the problem of taming the mounts, it would save quite a bit of effort, since he understood the demonic god religion's abilities. Then he had to consider how to form an alliance. The high priest said, "Green City has already been occupied by the Eternal Forest, but there are still many forces left in Green City. Other than the Green Religion, there are the shamans, necromancers, and druids, as well as the shadows of large foreign forces. With just our people, we can't fight against any of them. If we fight against them, it would be no different from sending ourselves to death." Chu Tian said with a frown, "I already knew that Green City was complicated, but I never thought it would be this complicated. There are many believers gathered here, and the stubbornness of these believers could not be compared to normal locals. Not to mention the fact that these believers were not weak, and there were other large forest forces interfering, which made the situation even more complicated. I think we need to enter the city. There are very few humans in Green City, so you will alert the enemy if you directly enter." The high priest said, "I'll have my clansmen buy supplies and send you in. With our cover, you don't need to worry about your identity being exposed." "This is good." At this time, a Fox clansman suddenly charged in and said, "High priest, this is bad. Those stupid bulls are causing trouble again." The Fox clan's high priest's white brows slightly jumped up. "Quickly, prepare for battle." Chu Tian saw the Fox clan's anxious appearance and immediately asked, "What happened?" "There's been a famine in the forest recently, and the surrounding tribes are short on food, always reaching out to us. Do these fellows really think that the demonic god religion is a granary?" The high priest's face was terrifyingly deep. "We need to teach them a lesson." Chu Tian's heart couldn't help slightly skipping a beat. Actually, before coming here, Chu Tian already knew that there was a food shortage around Green City. Logically speaking, these ferocious natives wouldn't lack food. After all, the forest was rich in biological resources, but in reality, a native tribe's activity radius was around 200 kilometers. If a native tribe stayed in one place for a long time and hunted, then as time passed, magical beasts would avoid the native tribe's hunting area, and the natives would find it harder and harder to hunt. These large tribes had over 100,000 people, so it would be a large matter if they didn't have food for a few days. If they didn't have food for a week, it would be a famine. Every time there was a famine, it meant that war would break out. The forest city was surrounded by densely packed locals, and their hunting areas overlapped, so there was less and less prey. The larger tribes had several 100,000 people, so if these several 100,000 people wanted to eat, where would the food come from? Once there was a famine, they could only steal it. Chu Tian followed the fox people into the forest. Several hundred fox people were already guarding this place. There were monkeys squatting in the trees and giant wolves hiding in the forest. The fox people were vigilantly looking in front of them. The other side had 10 times the number of the fox people, with several thousand of them densely packed together. Each one of them was wearing primitive vine armor and had axes or giant hammers in their hands, looking very fierce. Dolores and the priests angrily said, "Dirty, stupid minotaurs, do you want to start a war with us?" The minotaurs were 3 meters tall and were 4 times as strong as a human. They had a bull's head on their neck, and there seemed to be flames flickering in their eyes. Chu Tian felt this was very interesting. The Minotaurs were similar to the barbarians. They were a race that developed their physical strength, so they had the potential to become berserkers. If we wanted to start a war, we wouldn't have brought this few people and wouldn't waste words with you. A strong minotaur walked out with heavy steps. We'll borrow some food, and we'll return it in 2 months. A fox priest angrily shouted, "We don't even have enough food to eat. How could we have extra to lend to you?" "That's right, quickly scram. Otherwise you won't be able to leave this forest." The minotaurs were not a race with a good temper. These fox people didn't know what was good for them, and they were immediately angered. The leading minotaur roared out, "We've been neighbors for 10 years. Are we not going to help at all? We have several thousand people that are about to starve to death, and we're all going to die anyway. If we do something crazy, I hope you won't blame us for not giving face." This was a naked threat. The fox people's expressions were not good. Chu Tian asked the high priest beside him, "Are these minotaurs very strong?" "The minotaurs are in the west side of the valley and have around 100,000 people. They can be considered a large power in the area." The high priest said with a calm expression, "We've been minding our own business these past few years, but now that the minotaurs are starving, they'll probably cause a big ruckus." It was hard to find prey in the forest recently, and many tribes were suffering from starvation. The fox tribe was different from these places. Not only did the fox tribe know how to store food, they also knew how to grow their own food, so they could be self-sufficient in times of famine. How big was the minotaur's appetite? It wasn't inferior to the ogre's at all. A single minotaur's appetite was more than 10 fox peoples. If the fox tribe supported the minotaurs, how could the fox tribe survive? Dolores's enchanting face was filled with anger. "Greedy and despicable minotaurs, we will not submit to your strength. If you dare make a move, we'll make it so you won't be able to return." They could feel the fox people's killing intent. The surrounding monkeys and wolves in the forest all began to growl in low voices. The minotaur's eyes were red from hunger. They had gone around the surrounding tribes, and most of them couldn't protect themselves, so they didn't lend them food. Compared to them, the fox tribe was easier to deal with. So, since they didn't want to give it, they would steal it. The killing intent released by the minotaurs made the hearts of the fox tribe members sink. A bloody battle was hard to avoid. Although things like this often happened in the forest, with the fox tribe's current population, it would be hard for them to support this kind of bloody battle. If the tribe shrank even further, perhaps they wouldn't even have the qualifications to stay here. Why would we need to fight for a bit of food? Who is it? The minotaurs looked at Chu Tian with a strange expression. Humans were rarely seen in this area. So how could a human appear in the fox tribe? Chapter 8:18. The gnomes were not xenophobic like the elves. They were a relatively tolerant race. As long as one could have a good relationship with the gnomes, no matter what race or religion they would all have a place in Green City. Foreign merchants could also temporarily stay in Green City. This kind of open policy made Green City prosper, but it also brought a series of troubles to Green City. Those cults could quickly develop in Green City and even threaten the gnomes' rule. Other than the power behind the church supporting them, the main reason was that it was too easy for them to infiltrate. There were several shaman altars in Green City and a large shaman temple. The shaman religion was mainly made up of spirit beasts and had developed very quickly in Green City over the past few decades. Now, their influence was even faintly surpassing the green religion. Acting City Lord Clark anxiously paced back and forth. The surrounding tribes were preparing to attack Green City, which made him feel pressured. Therefore, he sent out a group of envoys early in the morning, hoping to resolve this problem. After all, with Green City's current weakness, it was clear that it couldn't withstand any more attacks. This negotiation was for stability. Green City was very sincere. But why hadn't the envoy returned yet? While Clark was feeling a bit uneasy, "Sir Acting City Lord," an assistant quickly charged and, Envoy. The envoy has been killed, and the bandits have gathered." "What did you say?" Clark angrily slapped the table. These damn fellows, getting an inch and wanting a foot, their greed knows no bounds. Do they really think that Green City is afraid of a mob like them? This assistant was very flustered. "I think they are about to attack. We should deal with them as soon as possible." The gnomes were not a martial race, so there weren't many warriors in the tribe. The Green Protectors had suffered a large loss in the last few decades, and this wave of locals would cause a large amount of damage to Green City. Of course, this was not what the acting city lord was most worried about. What he was most worried about was the mastermind behind this plot. Plagues, famine, and riots, it was always wave after wave. When had the forest been peaceful during this period of time? Clark had always been suspicious of the identity of a mastermind behind this matter. After all, famine was one of the main causes of war, and when the locals were in danger, they took the chance to stir up chaos. This was not hard to explain. Clark powerlessly waved his hand. Have the clansmen prepare. Yes, if the Eternal Forest could accept Green City, he wouldn't need to worry about these matters. Sir Acting City Lord, there are people outside asking to see you. How could Clark have time to see them? When he was prepared to send them away, Clark's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Who is it? I'm not clear. It's a human and a fox. The fox seems to be the demonic god religion's priest Dolores. Human? Invite them in. Clark seemed like he understood something, and his brows knit together. Most of the gnomes did not know the truth, and thought that the Eternal Forest army would arrive at Green City at any time. Only Clark and a few others knew that the Elven King had sent a human city lord, but this matter could not be spread. There weren't many races on the continent that liked humans. The gnomes were not an exception. What's more, humans were synonymous with outsiders here, which meant that they weren't even worth a fart in the local area. Even a powerful dragon couldn't suppress a local snake, not to mention that the other party was at most a flying mouse. How was it possible for him to inform such a large group of snakes? Clark sent away the people around him, and Chu Tian and Dolores walked in. Dolores politely gave a slight bow to the gnomes in front of her. Demonic god religion's priest Dolores greets Acting City Lord Clark. Clark did not look at Dolores, and looked at Chu Tian with a look of disdain. Humans had short lifespans, and this person looked very young, perhaps not even 20 years old among humans. He was no different from child. Even if the Elven King was irrational, he shouldn't have sent this kind of person to manage Green City, right? Clark said in a somewhat malicious voice, Green City does not welcome human travelers. What matter does your excellency and Priest Dolores have come to see me for? I'm very sorry, I'm not a traveler. Chu Tian did not have any thoughts of hiding it at all. He took out the Elven King's token and secret letter and placed it on the table. I am called Chu Tian. The Elven King has appointed me as Green City's City Lord. You. Clark's eyes popped out. You can be Green City's City Lord? I think the Elven King is confused. I would rather surrender to the spirit beasts. These were not completely words of anger. Clark never would have thought that when he sincerely surrendered to the Eternal Forest would treat the gnomes like this. Letting a human who hadn't even grown hair be the City Lord? This was simply an insult to Green City and an insult to the gnomes. Green City's situation was this complicated. What could this human do? Chu Tian saw the anger on the gnome's face, and his heart was filled with helplessness. According to the original plan, Chu Tian was prepared to subdue a group of local tribes. With the support of these locals, he would come to Green City to replace the city lord and move miracle commerce over. Because there was a change in the plan, and the locals wanted to attack Green City, Chu Tian had to change the order and come to Green City first. Why does Acting City Lord Clark think I can't be the City Lord? Then what makes you think you can be the City Lord? With my knowledge, my talent, and my mind, I can do things the gnomes can't. Chu Tian said in a very shameless voice, If Acting City Lord Clark doesn't believe me, we can make a simple bet. Clark was stunned. How do you want to bet? Within a month, I will eradicate all of Green City's internal problems. Whether it is the shamans, necromancers, druids, or anything else. Chu Tian knew that he would be questioned if he was alone, so he could only brag to increase his reputation. If I can do it, the gnomes must recognize my abilities. If I can't do it, you don't need to feel awkward. I will go to the Eternal Forest and resign from the Elven King. Clark revealed a look of disbelief. Do you know what you're saying? Do you know what the shamans, sorcerers, and necromancers represent? It's just the savage highlands and the Dragon's Ridge. What is there to worry about? Clark carefully looked over the human in front of him. Although he didn't believe this human could do it, from this person's calm expression, he was a bit calmer than he imagined. All right, I'll bet with you. This was a task that was almost impossible to complete. The gnomes were being pressured by these foreign powers, so they became weaker and weaker, having no choice but to rely on the eternal forest. If Chu Tian could really solve these problems for Green City, why couldn't he be the city lord? Of course, this was an impossible task. At this time, there was a wave of shouting coming from outside the discussion hall. Chu Tian was a bit stunned. What is going on? Clark knit his brows and hesitated for 2 seconds. The envoy sent by Green City to negotiate with the tribes has been sent back after being killed. The clansmen are very excited and are naturally protesting, requesting to fight. I'm afraid this battle is hard to avoid. Chu Tian slightly raised his brows. I want to see the envoy's body. What do you want to do? Clark was a bit vigilant. This gnome envoy died for Green City, so he should be buried in the forest temple, returning to the embrace of the forest god. Chu Tian said, I just want to see the person who sacrificed himself for Green City. Perhaps I can find something from his body. That's natural. Clark's brows slightly relaxed. This foreign human actually knew the green religion's beliefs and traditions. All right, but the priest will be holding the funeral soon, so I'll give you at most 10 minutes. That's enough. Dolores looked at Chu Tian with a bit of astonishment. Why did this fellow want to see a corpse? Clark brought Chu Tian into the forest temple. This was a large natural cave, and the entire space was covered in tree roots. There was an altar in the center with an intact corpse lying on top of it. Chu Tian found that the corpse's neck had stitches, so it should have been cut off by someone. His eyes slightly narrowed as he said, What did you send him to discuss? Of course, it was to discuss how to survive the famine. Clark's face filled with anger when he saw the envoy's body. The gnomes were even willing to open Green City's warehouse to borrow some food, but who would have thought that these damn fellows would be this greedy? Do they really think Green City is something they can break through? Chu Tian shook his head. Perhaps the envoy did not say that. I'm guessing that after he went to the locals, he must have used strong words and even insulted them. In the end, he angered the locals and was killed. What nonsense are you saying? Clark's acting city lord had a bit of good impression of this human, but it completely disappeared at this moment. You dare question the gnome's strict faith? Chu Tian did not explain. His right hand suddenly released a faint light, and he drew a rune on the gnome's head. Under the effect of this rune, the gnome's body began to violently tremble. Clark's acting city lord was already filled with rage. What did you do? Chu Tian softly said, See for yourself. Suddenly, there was a sharp cry that came from the gnome's ear. There was a disgusting bug that came out, and Chu Tian casually pinched it in his hand. Dolores cried out in shock. This is the shaman sorcerer's witchcraft insect. This is something that can control one's mind and thoughts. It should have been refined by some kind of witchcraft. Chu Tian looked at the struggling insect in his hand. If my guesses aren't wrong, when this envoy left Green City, he was attacked. This insect was planted in his brain, and his mind was controlled to participate in the negotiations. In the end, he angered the locals and was killed, but he also angered the gnomes in the end. Dolores was suddenly enlightened. This also means that the person behind the scenes is the shamans. That's right. Since we've locked onto the person behind the scenes, things will be much easier. Chu Tian's fingertip released a blue and white flame that turned the insect into ashes. Then let me experience this so-called shaman religion. Clark's acting city lord was stunned. This young human did not seem simple. Chapter 819. The Minotaur, filled with killing intent, was suddenly stunned. This was the depths of the forest of chaos. It was not the territory of humans. Therefore, humans were rarely seen. Anyone that could come here was a very powerful character. So who would come to this place to be a food seller? Would they transport food from tens of thousands of miles away? Or would they buy and sell food in the forest? This kind of behavior was like a treasure hunter that had finally found a treasure after a long time. But in the end, they had to move a stone back. This was not cleaning at all. The locals of the forest all knew how difficult and dangerous it was to pass through the forest of chaos. Even the locals that had lived here for generations did not dare to easily try it. Humans did not hesitate to take risks to come here. There were countless cheap heaven and earth treasures, even leather, wood, and ores. They were all profitable businesses, so why did they have to buy food? The Minotaur stared with wide eyes as he panted and said, "No matter who it is, playing with the Minotaurs will result in them turning into a meat patty." The Minotaur had a fierce look, but Chu Tian had a calm expression as he ignored it. "One day, no. Give me half a day to prepare. I'll personally deliver a large amount of food to the Minotaur tribe, and then we'll discuss the price. How about it?" Although reason told the Minotaur that it was impossible for this to happen, it was definitely this human doing something. Humans were famous for being sly on the continent. But from this human's expression and demeanor, it didn't seem like he was lying. Could he really bring large amounts of food? The Minotaur tribe had over 100,000 people, and the amount of food they needed was enough to feed a human city of over 2 million people. Why do we believe a human? Why don't you believe him? Even if you want to attack the Fox clan, just your several thousand people won't be enough. Why don't you go back and wait for half a day? Half a day. The Minotaur tribe wouldn't be unable to hold on for half a day, and the Fox clan wouldn't be able to run in half a day. Since the human was this confident, why not wait a bit? The Minotaur did not want to fight, unless they couldn't survive anymore. All right, the Minotaur will believe you this once. If you don't appear before nightfall, the Minotaur will bathe the Fox clan in blood. When the Fox clan people heard this threat, they all revealed looks of anger. The Minotaur did not have any reasoning with them, especially a group of hungry Minotaur. Although they were angry, they did not want to fight with these fellows. After all, the Minotaur's battle strength could not be underestimated, and once they went crazy, they would be terrifying. Chu Tian nodded with a faint smile. "It's a deal." The Minotaur leader waved his hand. The several thousand Minotaurs left. Dolores' enchanting face was filled with anxiety. She did not know why Chu Tian would make this kind of promise to the Minotaurs for no reason. "Do you have companions nearby?" "No." "Do you have any influence nearby?" "Also no." Chu Tian had come here by himself. Not to mention helping the Minotaur tribe survive, he did not even have a single bit of rations on him. The Fox clan members were all worried. Could it be that Chu Tian had taken the initiative to stall for time? Not only would this not solve the problem, once the Minotaurs found out that they had been tricked with their personalities, they would explode with 10 times the rage and craziness to trample over the Fox clan. The high priest tightly knit his brows. Although he was filled with worry, he could see that this human Chu Tian was not simple. Chu Tian had been appointed as Green City's city lord, so the Fox clan would be an important ally and helper. He had no reason to mess around with this matter. What was he thinking? Dolores couldn't hold back her anger. "Then what did you promise the Minotaurs? Don't you know how terrifying the mad Minotaurs are? Don't be anxious, don't be anxious." Chu Tian's eyes swept over the Fox clan, and he calmly said, "I'm asking you, do you want to get rich?" The moment these brainless words came out, all the Fox clan members were stunned. Dolores stood up, and her voluptuous body moved up and down with excitement. "What time is it now? And you're still saying this?" If it wasn't for the Lord Demonic God's sake, Dolores would have already made a move. "Dolores, sit down." The high priest had her sit down. Since her city lord is filled with confidence, then he must have a reason. Let's listen to what he has to say for now. Chu Tian said with a nod, "I'm not lying. I am indeed a merchant, and I can become a food seller." "Merchant?" The Fox clan looked at each other in blank dismay. The elves hated human merchants the most because nothing good ever happened when human merchants came into contact with the elves. The most profitable business in this forest was human trafficking, and whether it was the Fox clan or the elves, they were the main prey of these human traffickers. How could this kind of human be given the city lord status by the elven king? Actually, it's not hard to deal with these tribes. Chu Tian said in a meaningful voice, "I've also found that it's very easy to make a fortune here." Dolores asked, "How are you prepared to deal with the Minotaurs?" "They're not easy to fool." "Fool? Sorry, I'm a good person that keeps my promises." Chu Tian did not want to explain this clearly. He took out materials from the gourd. "Please move aside." Several prepared array flags were placed in the ground. When the array flags were activated, large amounts of runes were released into the center, finally forming a source energy array that caused spatial energy fluctuations. Chu Tian then placed an energy pillar at the base of the array to provide it with energy. Open! Chu Tian gave a low roar. Although Chu Tian did not have true spirit-level strength, with the prepared array flags, he could quickly create a spatial array to open the space warehouse. He had already used the communication device to contact the young miss. So, when Chu Tian opened the space warehouse, the 1,000 cubic meters of space was filled with over 100,000 cans. These cans were not traveling cans, but rather storage cans. The former were small cans that adventurers, mercenaries, and adventurers carried with them, while the latter were large cans that were half a person tall, used to store food. Over 100,000 large cans, with an average weight of around 50 kilograms, poured out of the space warehouse, instantly forming a small mountain in front of the Fox clan. The Fox clan members were all stunned. No one could understand what Chu Tian had done. It was like he was performing magic, creating all these things out of thin air. This was even more mysterious than their summoning techniques. Chu Tian opened the lid of a large can and threw it in front of the Fox clan members from several dozen meters away. Take a look for yourselves. Dolores smelled an enticing food fragrance. Could it really be food? The Fox clan members immediately came over in curiosity. This can was filled with cooked meat, with each piece weighing over 10 kilograms. It was fat and fresh, releasing an enticing smell, as if it was still steaming. It was like it had just come out of the pot. Dolores's eyes opened wide as she looked at the humans with a face filled with amazement. Her eyes were not like she was looking at a person, but rather like she was looking at a monster, or perhaps she was looking at God. She was filled with shock and pleasant surprise, as countless complex emotions gathered in her heart, finally condensing into a single question. How'd you do it? That's not the main point. Chu Tian asked with a smile. I'll ask you again, do you want to get rich? In the evening, the dark red sunset covered the entire forest. The Minotaur tribe in the valley was covered in a gloomy atmosphere. Countless Minotaurs were weakly digging at the grass and tree roots. These giant fellows that even dared to attack ogres were now in a sickly and weak state. Chief, it's almost dark. Of course I know. The Minotaur chief was a large fellow that was close to 4 meters tall, with a body that seemed like it was made of black steel. His 2 large nostrils would release a white mist each time he breathed, and his 2 eyes were even bigger than bells with flames of anger dancing in them. There were 2 curved blade-like horns on his head that released a cold glow. It seems like that human played us. That's right, the human is on the same side as the Fox clan. We'll kill our way over now and skin those foxes. We'll chop up their bones and make soup to drink, letting them know the consequences of deceiving the Minotaurs. A few of the Minotaur leaders with fiery tempers were already roaring in anger. Killing the foxes was not important. The most important thing was to steal. They needed food, otherwise in a single night, over 1,000 clansmen would starve to death. If this famine continued for 3-5 days, at least 10,000 clansmen would starve to death. At that time, the tribe would have to face the danger of disbanding. The Minotaur chief stood up. Although he didn't say anything, he was already lifting the giant axe forged from heavy iron. His killing intent was the best explanation. Chief, those foxes are here. When the Minotaur chief was prepared to lead his clansmen out, a Minotaur's voice suddenly came from outside. This made all the Minotaur's expressions change. What? Could they really be here? In front of the Minotaur Valley, Dolores and Chu Tian were fighting side by side. Around 500 Fox clan youths had arrived. Out of the way, out of the way! The Minotaur chief pushed aside a few people blocking his way. When he was about to loudly ask, his 2 bull eyes suddenly popped out. This was because the Fox clan had brought a large group of giant lizards, and each giant lizard was carrying a large tin can. The Fox clan members were busy moving the tin cans down. The Minotaurs had surprised expressions. These tin cans were made from the southern summer country's factory lathes. No one in the forest would waste time making these things to store food. There are 10,000 cans of food here, around 500,000 pounds. They're all processed, and there are several secret spices and seasonings that are 100 times more delicious than your crude food. I swear that as long as you eat our company's food, you won't be able to eat anything else in the future. Everyone could clearly hear that the Minotaur's breathing had become heavier. That's right, I've heard that the Minotaurs love strong wine, so I prepared 1,000 barrels of good wine. Each barrel is made from high-quality materials, and even in a human society that pursues a high quality of life, this is considered a pretty good wine. The Minotaur's eyes turned red, and their large Adam's apples moved a few times, but they could not say anything. Chu Tian looked at these Minotaurs. I wonder if everyone is satisfied? The Minotaurs couldn't help it anymore. Quickly give it to me. The Minotaurs almost lost their reasoning, and they wanted to steal it. I have to remind you, don't try to steal our food. This is just the first batch. I have plenty of good wine and meat, so you can have as much as you want. If you dare to steal it, then I'm sorry, I won't have any dealings with the Minotaurs in the future. Chu Tian added another sentence after saying this. I think that at this time, as long as we provide food as a condition, there will be many tribes interested in attacking the Minotaur's valley. The Minotaur's face fell. What do you want? Chapter 820. Dolores admired Chu Tian a bit more. The shaman religion was a mysterious religion that originated from the savage highlands spirit beasts. It was different from the demonic god religions, summoning, and beast-taming techniques. The shaman sorcerers mainly used curse attacks, soul attacks, witchcraft, and insect poisons. This kind of strange insect controlling technique was definitely a high-level witchcraft technique of the shaman religion. The person controlled by this witchcraft technique was no different from a normal person. There was no way to detect it because there was no additional state to their mind, soul, or thoughts. This was purely controlling their thoughts from a physical level. The runes Chu Tian drew had not disappeared yet. Clark's face was filled with a bit of surprise. You can only use witchcraft to remove the shaman's witchcraft. This seems to be the shaman's method. It's just a small trick, not worth mentioning. The shaman religion was recorded in history, but in Chu Tian's era, this religion had already disappeared. Chu Tian had seen records of the shaman's witchcraft in an ancient book. This witchcraft did not need a special shaman cultivation technique. It was just a secret technique. Chu Tian had studied it a bit in the past. Although he was not proficient in it, it was more than enough to break a small insect. Since he knew who his opponent was, it was easy to deal with it. I still feel that the famine around Green City is a bit strange. Dolores knit her brows. This famine was strange, but she couldn't find anything strange about it. In the past, unless there was a migration of beasts, a large-scale natural disaster, or a geological change, it would cause the beasts living in the green land to change. There were no signs this time. It was a strange change. Clark was already suspicious of this problem. The shaman sorcerers set up an altar and used witchcraft to disturb the beasts, causing this series of changes. This is completely possible in theory. Only, we don't have any evidence and we don't know when it started. Even if we tell them now, those tribes won't believe us. No wonder the shamans reacted so quickly. Father actually helped them. They had been preparing for several months, so they immediately grabbed the chance. This caused Chu Tian's plan to fail. This was too hateful. Speaking of this, the shaman religion was not small. At the very least, they had several 100,000 believers in the area around Green City. Now, they were inciting the locals to unite. Perhaps while the locals were attacking Green City, the shaman religion would send their followers to attack. Like this, even if the green religion wasn't defeated, they would still suffer a large loss. I'm most worried about the shaman's witchcraft. Clark seemed to realize the seriousness of the matter. We don't know when a messenger was controlled by this kind of insect. It could be recently, or it could be even longer. Since the shaman sorcerer can control a half-elf, then he can definitely control more. This situation is an objective reality. Chu Tian carefully introduced the shaman's witchcraft. This kind of witchcraft would not directly kill the host. After it entered the host's brain, it would quickly take over the host's nervous system, as well as their emotions and thoughts. The host would be completely controlled without them knowing. They would be able to eat and sleep normally, and the people closest to them would not notice anything strange. These people who were controlled by the witchcraft were like time bombs. When the shaman religion needed to use these chess pieces, the shaman priests would use witchcraft to activate them. The host would instantly lose their ability to think and become a puppet under the control of the shaman's witchcraft. The shaman sorcerers did not need to completely control the host's thoughts and could use witchcraft to subtly change the host's thoughts. This was because emotions were a kind of spiritual energy, and spiritual energy could be created through physical methods. Dolores and Clark were both dumbfounded. The shaman's witchcraft was mysterious and vicious, but outsiders knew very little about it. This foreign human was even more knowledgeable than the locals who had dealt with the shaman sorcerers for decades. This kind of witchcraft that could control one's thoughts was clearly a secret of the shaman religion. How did he know about it? No wonder, no wonder. The shaman religion could develop this quickly. Not only did they have a large influence in the surrounding tribes, there were also several shaman temples in Green City. The problem was here. The local army had several 100,000 people. They had several 100,000 followers over the years. There were also over 100 true spirit realm shaman sorcerers, as well as the core fighting strength of the shaman religion, as well as the puppets they had controlled in Green City over the years. This was a very terrifying strength. The local army had been formed for 3-4 days, and they had already gathered over 100,000 people. It was said that this number was still increasing, and it could reach several 100,000. Most of these locals had mobilized the adult males of their tribes. With this kind of effort and high efficiency, who would believe that the shamans weren't playing tricks on them? Once the locals attacked the city, the shaman religion's army would also attack. Adding in the cooperation of Green City, how would the gnomes deal with this situation? Also, if the shaman spirit beasts and the Green City gnomes fought, would the undead religion warlocks just stand by and watch? Even the druids were an unknown variable. Chu Tian had clearly pointed out all the stakes. Mister's insight is truly clear. Clark never thought that Chu Tian could see this clearly. He was sitting high up as the acting city lord, but he was this careless. His head was covered in sweat at this moment. Green City's situation is even more dangerous than I thought. The gnomes were proficient in research, but they were not good at diplomacy or military tactics. Now that the water was becoming muddier, he couldn't think of a way to solve it. Dolores was also shocked, not to mention Clark. Who would have thought that the situation would be this bad? Who would have thought that the situation would be this bad? Clark asked in a trembling voice. Then how many gnomes does Mr. think have become the shaman sorcerer's puppets? This kind of goo is very hard to refine, and it will consume the refiner's cultivation and vitality, so there won't be many of them. You don't need to worry about this. Chu Tian carefully considered it. Just follow my arrangements. The gnomes only need to stabilize Green City, and I'll take care of everything else. Could the situation really be taken care of? Clark already had no confidence in his heart. He could only believe in this outsider, a person that could become Green City's city lord. In the evening, the 150,000 elites of the forest gathered in the forest. The morale of the locals was high, and they were filled with killing intent. When they gathered, there would be locals joining in from time to time. Of course, these were all small powers that wanted to take advantage of the situation to loot Green City. The allied army meeting began. The ogres, tiger, leopard, lizard, snake, the various large tribe chiefs, and the high-level members of the various tribes all came to participate in this meeting. These different-looking leaders all had angry expressions on their faces at this moment. Green City is too arrogant. They actually want to exterminate us and make us their slaves? These gnomes don't even know they are about to die. Do they really think they are still 100 years ago? We will quickly gather several 100,000 people. At that time, with the support of the shaman religion's witchcraft, our battle strength will increase by more than double. It will be easy for us to trample these outwardly strong gnomes. The entire allied army was covered in a layer of strange rage, violence, and fanaticism. They were all impatient to charge into Green City and burn Green City to ashes, stealing all the wealth and food. Several goat race shaman priests stood in the corner with a smile of ridicule on their faces. The ox race's chief Arnold will lead 5,000 minotaurs to join the alliance. The locals were shocked. The minotaurs were very strong, and they were not inferior to the ogres, but they specialized in charging at the front lines. These 5,000 minotaurs charging together was enough to easily tear apart the weak gnome defenses. Arnold was the Minotaur tribe's chief, but he was actually personally participating in this mission. This Arnold was the youngest chief of the Minotaurs in 200 years. He was a typical blockhead with a fiery and straightforward personality. He was a Minotaur that couldn't be more traditional, but with the Minotaurs' personalities, they wouldn't play any tricks. Since Arnold had personally come, it meant that the Minotaurs also wanted to fish in Green City. More than a dozen tribal chiefs and a few shaman sorcerers received Arnold. One of the tribe chiefs said, "Arnold, you only took out 5,000 Minotaurs. Isn't that too little? There are over 100,000 Minotaurs in the Minotaur Valley." Another tribe chief followed up, "We will split the loot according to work. Whoever does the most will get the most. I'm afraid 5,000 Minotaurs won't be enough." The Minotaurs' reinforcements aren't just warriors. Arnold gave a simple smile. "You don't lack warriors, so the Minotaurs will give you what you lack the most." "What do we lack?" "Food." "What?" The various tribe chiefs were stunned. "You're saying you'll give food?" Arnold's large body moved to the side, and he pointed at the Minotaurs behind him. All the tribe chiefs looked over. Several thousand fully armed Minotaurs had pulled over a large pile of metal cans, moving them to the native soldiers one by one. The entire Allied army camp was covered in cheers. The various tribe chiefs were all stunned. What is going on?" Arnold said with a laugh. "A human merchant came to the Minotaurs not long ago, and this food was bought from him. There's enough good wine and meat, enough to fight our way to Green City." Human merchant? Where did this human merchant come from? How could he bring this much food into the forest? The local chiefs were all shocked, and their killing intent weakened by a lot. There were even some people who asked Arnold how to contact this human merchant. "I don't know his background." Arnold shook his head. "But if you need, I can help you contact him." The shaman priests looked at each other. They could see the shock in each other's eyes. One of the shaman priests pinched a seal and muttered an incantation. "Roar!" An ogre suddenly roared out, "If we take down Green City, how much food can we not have? Why spend a large amount of money to trade with a human merchant? Not to mention, who knows how much food this merchant can provide? If we take down Green City, it will be enough for us to eat for 10 years. That's right. Attack Green City. Arnold, your food has come at the right time. Once our soldiers are full, we will definitely take down Green City. At that time, we'll give you a portion." Arnold nodded. This Minotaur chief looked over at the shaman priest and revealed a strange expression. Chapter 821. Night in the Minotaur Valley. Several tens of thousands of Minotaurs were celebrating, filling the valley with the fragrance of meat and wine. Chu Tian was sitting in the center of the valley with the Fox clan around a bonfire. Dolores was sitting on the side, her silver-white hair flowing down as she held a piece of roasted meat in her hands, eating it in large bites. "You really are something." Dolores was very dissatisfied looking at the Minotaur's happy appearances, as if these bulls being happy was a big bad thing for her. Therefore, she complained to Chu Tian beside her, "It's fine if you say you're sending food, but these stupid bulls can eat anything. They can even digest rotten wolf meat in their stomachs. Even the toughest blade grass is nothing. You just have to send this good food. It's too good for these fellows." After saying this, she fiercely ate a few more bites. The forest natives ate raw meat, and their food conditions were far behind. Natives were natives in the end. They couldn't compare to civilized humans. Even in human society, Miracle Commerce's source energy cooking was the best of the best. Even for the elves who pursued a high quality of life, Vivian fell in love with this food the first time she tasted it. The elves also had very high cooking skills. They could combine demon beast meat and herbs to make delicacies. Only the elves' cooking process was as complicated as refining pills. How could they be like Miracle Commerce's source energy arrays? After Meng Yingying invented the canned food, Miracle Commerce had built several factories. These canned food factories required large amounts of source energy chefs to manually operate them. But now that the source energy arrays could be supplied with energy, they didn't need to be manually operated. Although there were no source energy chefs to control the fire, and the taste of the source energy foods was not as good, it was only relatively speaking. Chu Tian did not care about the fox girl's complaints. This was because he had just brought Dolores, and they had ruthlessly slaughtered the Minotaurs. Although, because of the long-term famine, the Minotaurs had already exchanged the precious herbs and rare materials they had stored, they still had quite a few treasures, especially the beast cores, demon crystals, leather, and etc. They were all accumulated by the Minotaurs over many years. These things were not worth much here, but as long as they could be sent to the southern summer country, they would be very valuable. The level 3 demon beast leather was enough to make high-quality leather armors, and the beast cores and demon crystals could be used in large amounts in a laboratory. Other than that, there were also herbs, metals, and other materials. He roughly calculated it. The source energy cans were worth around 300 low-grade source stones, which was around 300 million in southern summer gold coins. This was because the ingredients were bought in the forest over the past month and were mostly level 2 ingredients, so the cost was relatively high. After all, with the Minotaur's strength, level 1 source energy food would not be enough to satisfy them. Chu Tian had basically emptied the Minotaurs. The total value of these things was around 3,000 low-grade source stones, which was around 3 billion in southern summer crystal coins. Chu Tian did not do anything at all. Miracle Commerce and Oldman Small Town were buying demon beast meat at a high price. The kingdom's mercenaries, hunters, and locals were naturally grateful to Miracle Commerce. After all, even the demon beast meat could be sold for a good price, which was a large amount of income for them. The purchased food was sent to the southern summer country's factories to be processed before being sold to the famine areas, instantly earning 10 times the profit. Moreover, the locals were also grateful to him. Chu Tian was simply an angel that descended from the heavens, saving their tribe from disaster. This kind of business that could earn them money and also earn gratitude was rarely seen. Now that the fox girl Dolores had thrown away her prejudice against Chu Tian, she already admired this human a little. Although Chu Tian did not say how to transport the food, Dolores did not ask him, so she went to find the little fox. How could the little fox keep this secret? The Fox clan had already treated it as an ancestor and worshipped it in the temple, making this fellow very proud. Dolores had only given it a little benefit, and it immediately told Dolores about the space warehouse. It was no exaggeration to say that this space transportation technology was comparable to a miracle. Especially in times of famine for many tribes, Chu Tian could definitely use this method to earn a large amount of money. Dolores did not say another word as she led her clansmen to fight Chu Tian. At this time, the Minotaur chief Arnold was already drunk. He had never felt this happy before. That human merchant had not only given the Minotaurs a pleasant surprise and temporarily alleviated the famine, he had also allowed them to enjoy delicious food that they would never be able to enjoy in their entire lives. The wine was top-quality wine. The meat was top-quality meat. Arnold felt a wave of sorrow. He felt like he had lived these past few decades in vain. He didn't even know what enjoying life was. If he knew that the human world was this beautiful, he wouldn't have become a chief and would have left the forest to enjoy himself in a human country. This Minotaur in the third true spirit layer, no matter if he went to a large or small country, he would be respected. It was already too late to regret it now. What Arnold was truly surprised about was that the things the human merchant took were things the Minotaurs couldn't use. For example, demon beast essence bones, blood essence, beast cores, demon crystals, and leather. These things couldn't be eaten and weren't worth much in the forest, so the Minotaurs were too lazy to bring them back. He never thought that they could be used to save their tribe at this time. If they knew this earlier, they would have stored more. Arnold's drunkenness suddenly sobered up a bit. That's right. The Minotaurs were not rich to begin with, and most of their stores had been traded away. Although they had traded for several 100,000 gene of food, how long could this last the tribe? It was unknown how long this famine would last. If the tribe faced a food crisis, how would they survive it? Arnold's brows, without eyebrows, knit together. Although the Minotaurs weren't smart, it wasn't hard to foresee this obvious problem. Arnold carefully considered it before finally finding Chu Tian and saying, "Respected Mr. Chu Tian, you've solved a large problem for the Minotaurs. I thank you on behalf of the Minotaurs." Chu Tian waved his hand in an uncaring manner. "Don't say it like this. I am a merchant. This is a fair trade. You don't owe me anything." Arnold's large black face was a bit embarrassed. The quality of the food this time is very good. I think it's enough to last the Minotaurs for around 5 days, but after 5 days... Chu Tian pretended not to understand Arnold's words. "Our company has plenty of food. As long as the price is good, we can supply as much as we want." But Arnold released 2 streams of white gas from his nose as he anxiously said, "Our tribe's treasured elixirs have been traded for food in Green City half a month ago. Most of the worthless leather and ores have been used to trade for this food. Our tribe really can't take out any more. I think we can owe it first. As long as the tribe can guarantee a month's supply, the Minotaurs can guarantee double the payment in half a year." Chu Tian shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "Chief Arnold should know that I won't be able to earn anything from this business. Think about it. How hard would it be to send this large amount of food into the forest? If I didn't want to make friends with the Minotaurs, I wouldn't do this kind of losing business. If the Minotaurs want to owe it, I'm afraid it's a bit unreasonable. The company has to consider the costs and risks. I'm a merchant, so I'm very sorry." The Minotaurs were anxious hearing this. They did not know how long this famine would last. If this human merchant lost confidence in the Minotaurs, it would be a heavy blow to the Minotaurs. It was, as he said, wanting to send this much food deep into the forest. Just thinking about it was an incredible matter. Not to mention the fact that Chu Tian didn't have any precious herbs or rare resources, just some common materials. This kind of high-quality food was sold for such a low price. Perhaps it was even cheaper than Green City. It seemed like there was nothing to earn from this. What should he do, steal it? No, Arnold didn't even know the human merchant's background. Not to mention the human caravans that came here to do business were not simple. Chu Tian had warned the Minotaurs that if they did anything out of line, the humans could use the food to support the surrounding tribes and have them attack the Minotaurs. The Minotaurs would not be able to bear the consequences. "We can consider any conditions. As long as it can help our clansmen pass this crisis, you can raise any conditions." "Really?" Arnold sincerely nodded. Chu Tian nodded in satisfaction. "Actually, I have a special identity, but I can't tell you right now. However, you should understand that you won't lose out if you follow me." The Minotaurs knit their brows without eyebrows again. What did he mean? Could it be he wanted the Minotaurs to be loyal to him? This was also impossible. He was just a human, and the Minotaurs would not bend their knees for food. "Chief Arnold, I'll allow the Minotaurs to pay a part of the debt." Chu Tian said this, and then suddenly squatted down. "As for the other part, we can use employment to pay it back." "Employment? I'm not a local after all, so it's a hindrance to do things here. If I have the help of the Minotaur's elite soldiers, there will be much less resistance when I start my business." Chu Tian said this and pointed at the large cans of food on the side. "Each Minotaur elite will get 2 cans of food a day. What do you think?" A single can of food was several dozen pounds. It was enough for a Minotaur to eat for several days. 1 Minotaur was paid 2 cans of food. This was not low in a time of famine. A single Minotaur was enough to feed the entire family. Only Arnold was still worried. He did not know this human's background, and if he sent the Minotaurs to their deaths, he would not be able to explain it to his clansmen. "You don't need to worry." Chu Tian then added, "If the Minotaurs are heavily injured during the employment period, we will treat their injuries and compensate them with 10 cans of food, allowing them to peacefully recover. If the Minotaurs die during the employment period, Miracle Commerce will compensate with 100 cans of food." The Minotaur's breathing became heavy. This was a temptation that was hard to resist. Chief Arnold thought about it for a long time before saying in a probing voice, "The Minotaurs are the bravest warriors in the forest. We need at least 4 cans of food a day." Chu Tian thought about it and didn't bargain, so he agreed. 5 cans of food would give them several hundred pounds of meat. If they bought a random bull, they would be able to get close to a ton of meat. What did this bit of food count for? Miracle Commerce did not lack resources, but what they lacked the most was allies, especially allies in Green City. Using food to maintain allies was a pretty good method. No problem. Chu Tian obtained the support of another tribe other than the Fox clan. Not only would these Minotaurs support Chu Tian could even hire the Minotaurs to charge into battle. Therefore, as long as there was a need, Chu Tian could hire several thousand Minotaurs to fight for him. With the help of this power and the Fox clan, Chu Tian was much more confident. But this was not enough. Chapter 822. Green City, the Shaman Temple. Several dozen shaman priests were surrounding an altar for a ceremony. The shaman religion originated from the savage highlands. The religion's believers were mainly spirit beasts, orcs, and trolls, believing in the shaman god and the sorcerer god. The Green City shaman religion had existed several hundred years ago. At that time, the gnomes' green religion was still very strong, so the shaman religion did not have much development. Several decades ago, the gnomes experienced several wars and quickly weakened, so the shaman religion welcomed an opportunity to develop in the Green City area. Several decades ago, the Savage Highlands sent High Priest Mars to Green City, and Mars was in charge of the development of Green City. Because High Priest Mars was very strong and adding in the resources of the Savage Highlands, the shaman religion in Green City had expanded by several dozen times in just a few decades. Now, there were several tens of thousands of shaman sorcerers in Green City. The several tens of thousands of shaman sorcerers were all very dangerous characters, and there were over 100 shaman sorcerers who had obtained the surrender of the shaman priests. If a shaman sorcerer wanted to become a shaman priest, not only did they need to be at the true spirit realm, they also needed to practice their witchcraft to perfection. Just like this, the shaman religion had gained a foothold in Green City. The high priest led the several tens of thousands of shaman sorcerers through mediation with the gnomes, obtaining the qualifications to build a temple in Green City. Then they spread to the surrounding tribes, and now the number of shaman religion believers in the forest had reached several 100,000. This was a power that could threaten the green religion. At this moment, there were over 2,000 strong figures that were densely packed together in the shaman temple. They didn't move at all like statues, and each of them released a terrifying aura. They were definitely strong characters in the forest. They were already not people. These fellows were covered in the shaman religion's runes, just like a giant painted human. From their feet to their legs to their bodies, from their head to their chest to their fingers, they were completely covered. A strong curse and witchcraft energy was being released from these people's bodies. Voodoo puppets. These were puppets refined from an extremely cruel witchcraft technique. The shaman sorcerers sang and danced around the voodoo puppets for a while before suddenly gently pulling the voodoo puppets' hair. In the end, their scalps and skulls were pulled out, just like opening a lid, but these voodoo puppets did not move at all. The brains of each voodoo puppet had long been hollowed out. The shaman sorcerer grabbed a large pile of insects, which looked like thousands of centipedes or earthworms entangled together. They were still wriggling and were all stuffed into the empty skulls of the voodoo puppets. Each insect was a witchcraft that the shaman sorcerer had spent a lot of effort to refine. When these insects containing powerful witchcraft power were stuffed into the voodoo puppets' brains, the shaman sorcerer immediately covered the skulls and then began to dance and sing. On the shaman altar, a white-haired old troll raised his hands high. A thick and vigorous energy revolved around the shaman temple. Great shaman god and sorcerer god, please accept the sacrifice of your servants and grant the voodoo puppets great power. A strong light burst out from the altar and finally turned into thousands of light beams that landed on the voodoo puppets. The insects that were wriggling in the skulls instantly became several times more active and continued to drill into the voodoo puppets' bodies. There were insects crawling under the skin of each voodoo puppet, and the light from the shaman runes on their bodies became even more intense. Finally, the thing that had been motionless like a statue was awakened. Their originally empty eyes suddenly had eyeballs and spirit. They all knelt on the ground on one knee and said in a low voice, "Long live the shaman." The 2,000 voodoo puppets that the shaman sorcerer had carefully refined were finally awakened. These puppets were not ordinary puppets. Other than the fact that they were enchanted with all kinds of witchcraft and curses from head to toe, which gave each of them a terrifying combat strength, their bodies were almost immortal. They were not afraid of fire, water, acid, or cutting. They even had simple thinking abilities. They could be said to be perfect puppet warriors. The time has come. A white-haired old troll opened his eyes and revealed a pair of sparkling eyes. This battle will turn Green City into ruins. This was the shaman high priest Mars from the Savage Highlands. He was an old troll with unfathomable witchcraft and was already over 150 years old this year. Mars called out in a low voice, "Luz." "High priest, what orders do you have?" A green-skinned orc walked in front of Mars. Luz was an orc shaman, and although he was young, his attainments in witchcraft were very shocking. Luz's witchcraft was second only to Mars. Therefore, he had a very high position in the Green City Shaman religion. He was basically the second in command and was also Mars' assistant. Mars looked at his assistant and said, "How are the preparations of the troops outside?" Lurtz replied, "When the tribes start to attack, the shaman army will also start to attack. With our help from the inside, this battle is almost certain. We can't be careless. Although the gnomes are weak, no one knows what trump cards they have." Mars said in a deep voice, "The gnomes have submitted to the eternal forest, so we don't have much time left. We can use the chess pieces we buried among the gnomes. Go and wake them up." "Yes, High Priest." Luz brought several shaman sorcerers to a secluded cliff and began to use witchcraft, activating the chess pieces the shamans had buried among the gnomes over the past few years. These chess pieces have been unknowingly infected by the shaman's brain controlling witchcraft. The goo had already parasitized the brains of the gnomes, and as long as the shamans did not activate it, the gnomes would return to normal. Now is the time to use these chess pieces. Luz and the shaman sorcerers began chanting and immediately felt the existence of the witchcraft. They were all activated, allowing the witchcraft to take over their thoughts, making these gnomes come here to meet him. The sorcerer could send some simple messages to the witchcraft, like calling them over. But those complex commands couldn't be directly sent. The shaman sorcerer had to bring the host to their side and send detailed instructions to the host. After around 20 minutes, 5 gnomes appeared here. These were the 5 gnomes controlled by the shaman sorcerers. They were all high-level gnomes, and as long as they could control these gnomes, they could open the barrier at the critical moment and turn off the green protectors. This would paralyze Green City's defenses and increase the shaman religion's chances of winning by at least 20%. "Let's begin." Luz waved his hand. The 5 shaman sorcerers walked over to the 5 gnomes. They were prepared to control them and send out instructions. Suddenly, the 5 gnomes made a move at almost the same time. Poisonous vines shot out from the ground and instantly wrapped around the 5 defenseless shaman sorcerers. Finally, a vine pierced through their bodies. "What?" Luz was shocked. Before he could understand what was happening, the surrounding grass was suddenly bestowed with some kind of power, and a low voice echoed in his ears. "God of nature above, please bestow the vitality of a giant dragon upon all living beings." This was the Green Religion's giant dragon power technique. It was definitely a high-level technique. There were less than 10 people in Green City that could use this move. Luz could no longer run. The originally soft grass suddenly expanded, and in an instant he was wrapped up like a huge rice dumpling. After being infused with nature's power, each blade of grass became harder than steel and had a terrifying strength. As long as the other side was willing, even an earth dragon could be turned into minced meat. The power released from the grass could even suppress Luz's spirit energy, making him lose the ability to resist. Clark put down his staff and gave a cold laugh. You never thought it would happen. It's you. Luz looked at Clark and then at the 5 dead sorcerers before looking at the 5 normal gnomes. He could clearly feel that the voodoo goo were in the gnomes' brains, but he didn't know why he couldn't activate them. At this time, a handsome and radiant human youth walked out from behind Clark with a seductive foxwoman in tow. Demonic god priest? Luz couldn't understand why a priest of such a weak sect would appear here. Dolores revealed a tender smile. Sir City Lord truly has a divine foresight. Not only did you catch him in the act, you also caught the second in command of the shaman religion. Strange. How did you know that Mars would send this fellow? Making the gnome puppet remove Green City's defenses is a very important task. If I was that high priest, I would have sent the most capable person to do it. How do we deal with this person? I think it's better to just kill him. Dolores's words made Luz's expression change. She continued to say, this fellow's position in the shaman religion is not low. If we can kill him, not only will it decrease the shaman religion's strength, it will also greatly affect their morale. Clark also thought like this. Luz's shaman witchcraft was only inferior to Mars. He had easily succeeded with a sneak attack this time. Otherwise, it would not have been this easy to subdue him. Chu Tian shook his head as he walked in front of Luz. Priest Luz, your father has always been a local shaman. Your father was the leader of the shamans before Mars came. Am I right? So what? If there was no Mars, you would have inherited your father's legacy and become the local shaman leader. Chu Tian's meaning was very clear. The shamans have always been independent. So why would you listen to Mars and become a puppet and chess piece of the Savage Highlands? Luz gave a cold laugh. Don't you think this method of sowing discord is too laughable? I think you need to understand something first. I'm not trying to drive a wedge between you, and actually eradicating a trivial shaman religion is not a hard matter for me. So I don't need to use this method. I just feel that it is a pity for the shamans to disappear from Green City. After all, the shaman witchcraft is still a bit useful. Luz's expression became strange. This fellow's tone was very light, like he did not place the local shaman religion in his eyes at all. Mars was a shaman sent by the Savage Highlands, and he had directly taken orders from the Savage Highlands, so there was no possibility of peace talks. The only one he could use was Luz. Chu Tian then said, First let me introduce myself. I am the Elven King's Eternal City, Lord of Green City, and this place will become my territory. I'll give you 2 choices now. The first is to turn to ashes with the shamans, or the second is to join hands with me to defeat Mars. I'll make you the leader of the local shamans, giving you protection and freedom. I'll allow the shamans to become a member of Green City and allow you to develop in Green City. Why would the Eternal Forest send a human to be the city lord? Luz looked at Clark beside him. Although Clark's expression was a bit complicated, it seemed to confirm his words. I don't know much about curses or witchcraft, but I have a bit of confidence in my alchemy skills. Chu Tian took out a pill and forcefully shoved it into Luz's mouth. This pill will take effect in 3 days and corrode your entire body, finally causing you to dissolve and die. Don't have any wishful thinking. No one in the Forest of Chaos can cure this pill. I believe you are a smart person, and a smart person should know how to make a smart choice. I have at least 10 ways to destroy you. Even if Green City can't destroy you, are you willing to be ordered around by the Savage Highlands and become a pawn that can be sacrificed at any time? I've already said this. You can decide for yourself. Chu Tian waved his hand at Clark, and Clark removed the bindings. Chu Tian didn't even look at him, and immediately left with Clark and Dolores. Damn! Luz could feel that there was a medicinal energy that had spread to every cell in his body in just a few seconds. He had never seen such a powerful poison that could hide itself. The human was not lying, and it would be hard to find someone who could cure this poison in the Forest of Chaos. Not to mention that the incubation period was only 3 days. This also meant that if he didn't make a choice in 3 days, he would be dead for sure. Damn, he had fallen to this point because of a moment of carelessness. Where did that mysterious human come from? From their appearance, It seemed like they did not place the shaman religion in their eyes. When Luz returned to the shaman temple, High Priest looked at him. "Has the chess piece been arranged?" Luz lowered his head with a strange look in his eyes. He said in a calm voice, "High Priest can be assured, everything has been arranged." Chapter 8:23. Chu Tian and Arnold discussed the details of their cooperation. The main thing was the amount of food, the time limit for the Minotaurs to repay the loan, and the interest. All the Minotaurs in the Minotaur Valley were very grateful to Chu Tian. This human was simply a savior from the heavens. The most important thing was, the food that this human brought was too good. It was like what Chu Tian said before. After eating Miracle Commerce's food, the Minotaurs couldn't eat anything else. Chu Tian announced that the Fox clan would become Miracle Commerce's local representative. For things like sending food to the Minotaur Valley, they would all be taken care of by the Fox clan. Chu Tian would not easily appear again. The Minotaur's battle strength does not lose to the ogres. You can obtain the support of the Minotaurs. This is indeed beneficial for you in the future. Dolores's bright eyes flashed with praise and a trace of satisfaction at the same time. The Fox people had endured these stupid bulls for a long time, and now that the stupid bulls had to listen to the Fox clan, she felt her heart fill with joy. But the Minotaurs in the Minotaur Valley are only working with you because of the threat of famine. It doesn't mean they are willing to sell their lives for you. As long as the famine situation is alleviated, I think your control over them will quickly decrease. Dolores then said, "Your current actions are a risky investment. Who knows if the Minotaurs will repay the resources? Unless you become the city lord and make this debt real, all your efforts will be wasted." Chu Tian nodded. "Then what do you think I should do? We can secretly hunt the Minotaurs in the Minotaur Valley, or we can use her demonic god's abilities to take the demon beasts away, making the Minotaurs eat less and less. This way, we can maintain our dependence on miracle commerce." But Dolores's charming voice changed. "Doing this will be very strenuous, and there will be a gap if we're discovered, which will make things worse. Moreover, there's only a single Minotaur tribe, so it won't be of much help to you." This beautiful fox girl could already stand in Chu Tian's point of view. Chu Tian was very satisfied with this. The Fox clan had clearly tied their benefits to miracle commerce. A single Minotaur tribe is far from enough, so I need the support of more tribes. Chu Tian calmly said, "If I have 10-20 tribes supporting me, wouldn't it be much easier to become the city lord?" Dolores's eyes flashed with a look of surprise. "If you can obtain the support of this many tribes, naturally it won't be a problem. The problem is, how do you do it? This is definitely not an easy matter. It's simple. A good move can be used twice." Chu Tian was now inspired by the Minotaur tribe. Survival was the most important rule for the forest locals. Now that there was a large-scale famine near Green City, several tribes were struggling like the Minotaur Valley. Even if the other tribes were in a better situation, they would still be struggling. Controlling the food in this period would mean controlling the locals. Chu Tian did not recommend risky investments. As long as he obtained the support of the locals, even if it was temporary support, he would be able to stabilize his position as the city lord. At that time, the locals would have no choice but to submit and their debts would be settled. "I'll need your help with this matter. With our current relationship, Sir City Lord's matter is our matter. To be able to help Sir City Lord, of course it is our honor." Dolores smiled beautifully. When her voluptuous body trembled, Chu Tian couldn't help but take another look. Dolores didn't care at all. Instead, she threw him a flirtatious look and said, "It's just that our demonic saint church is very small and everyone's lives are very happy. Sir City Lord, do you think?" That voice seemed like it could drip water. The charm of the Fox clan's great beauty was like 100 barrels of honey poured into a pond. It was enough to melt the bones of any human man. This was asking for benefits. The Fox clan naturally followed benefits. They would not work for free. "What are you in a rush for? Since I said I would make you rich, of course I won't go back on my word. Why don't you ask, when have I, Chu Tian, ever mistreated anyone?" Chu Tian heroically patted the fox girl's shoulder. "You can be assured, Of all the profits we make in the forest, I will give a tenth of it to your demonic saint religion, including the debts of the Minotaur tribes. Once these debts are confirmed, we will all receive a share. A tenth? Stingy. Dolores's misty eyes were filled with a happy glow. Under Chu Tian's exploitation methods, the local tribes would have to pay back their old debts. Even if they only gave a tenth of the profits to the Fox clan, it would still be a considerable amount. The Fox clan did not put in any effort at all. They were only acting as intermediaries and agents, so these benefits were basically free. Especially the debts. This was not just debts, it was simply usury. If the famine became longer and the locals owed more and more money, the Fox clan would be able to lie down and earn large amounts of money. Dolores's attitude towards Chu Tian clearly became better. Sir City Lord, what can I help you with? I need information. I need information on all the locals that Green City can rope in, as well as the hunting areas of the locals. Chu Tian felt goosebumps rise on his skin when he heard the fox girl's bone-melting voice. Also, I want all the priests to help me make a batch of things. The hunting areas were the resources the locals relied on to survive. The forest locals had a 100% hunting culture, so they did not know how to farm, so the hunting areas were the tribe's only source of food. A large tribe's hunting area was at most 200 miles wide. Chu Tian wanted to completely cut off the locals' limited food source. With the Fox clan's information and Chu Tian's methods, this matter was completely possible. In the future, when the army or mercenaries camped in the wilderness, there would be a beast-repelling array used to defend against demon beasts. This beast-repelling array was similar to the beast-luring array. The beast-luring array used auras, pheromones, sounds, and smells to lure in demon beasts, while the beast-repelling array was the opposite. It was used to drive away demon beasts. Chu Tian brought Dolores and the several dozen Fox clan priests to help. These Fox clan's battle strength was not high, but they were all genuine, true spirit cultivators. Moreover, the Fox clan had studied source energy arrays, so they only used 2 days to make 200 level 3 Earth Dragon Beast Repelling Talismans. The Earth Dragon Repelling Talisman simulated the aura of the Earth Dragon Beast. The Earth Dragon Beast was a very strong demon beast that could hunt down demon beasts under level 3, and it did not have any natural enemies of the same level. This talisman? It was unremarkable, and normal people could not sense its existence. But wild beasts and demon beasts could sense this faint aura. When the beast-repelling talisman was placed in the tribe's hunting area, each talisman could cover several dozen miles. All the demon beasts would run away when they sensed the earth dragon, not lingering in the area. Chu Tian was certain that in just 3-5 days, the locals would fall into chaos. Those who were starving would be even more starving, and those who weren't starving would be anxious. At this time, Chu Tian would have the Fox clan spread the news in the forest, saying that there was a human company in the forest and that they could buy large amounts of food at a low price. The reaction of the locals could be imagined without even needing to guess. Chu Tian would use the same trick again, using food as a condition to control them. Chu Tian was just one person, and the Fox clan was just a proxy, so the locals had no choice but to accept it. Once Chu Tian stopped supplying them with food, they would have no other choice. Therefore, for the sake of survival, they would most likely choose to compromise in the end. This plan was very simple, but it couldn't be denied that it was a very practical plan. With the effects of the beast-repelling talisman and the spatial transportation ability, Chu Tian could completely control these locals. Not only would they be eaten by Chu Tian in the end, they would also owe him a large amount of money, and they would have to be grateful to him in the end. This was too sinister. Dolores was already filled with admiration towards Chu Tian. This mysterious man was very attractive. He seemed to always be able to do incredible things. Even if it was something he casually took out, like the most common beast-repelling talisman, it would still be a good thing in the local market. Such a small talisman? How many tribes would they be able to avoid being harassed by demon beasts? Not to mention the mysterious space warehouse. We'll send a talisman to each tribe's hunting area. Send them to the hunting areas of each tribe. Now, We just need to wait for the effects to come into play and make the tribes fall into chaos. Dolores looked a bit tired after running around for several days, but she was still full of energy. Her eyes were filled with anticipation, but there was also a trace of worry. This time we'll be targeting 9 tribes at the same time. With this many tribes, adding up to 1 million people, will there be any problems on your side? Dolores was very clear. If Chu Tian messed it up, he would just leave. The starving natives had nowhere else to go, so they either split up, causing their tribe to completely collapse. From then on, a large group of wandering forest robbers appeared in the forest, where they formed an alliance to attack other tribes and plunder their resources. It was very difficult for the Fox tribe to remain independent in this area, providing for the consumption of 1 million people by themselves. I'm afraid that's not an easy task. It was normal for Dolores to have this kind of worry. This was a bit strenuous for Chu Tian. Although he had the full support of the southern summer country, the food that normal people ate was not suitable for these strong forest locals. Therefore, Chu Tian had to prepare source energy foods, and they had to be source energy foods. Level 2 source energy foods took up a large portion, and even with Miracle Commerce's production capacity, this was still a large burden. But the young miss had already made preparations, so she had prepared a large amount of food in advance. It should not be a problem to maintain this for a while. Chu Tian confidently said to Dolores, "Don't worry, as long as you follow me this time. The Fox Clan's day of becoming rich is just around the corner." Dolores was a bit excited as she cupped her hands. "Many thanks, Sir City Lord." The Fox Clan was the easiest to buy. As long as there was profit, the Fox Clan would follow you with all their hearts. Chu Tian was very clear on this point, so he sincerely said to the Fox Clan beauty, "To be honest, I've been lacking people like you by my side. Although we don't often come in contact with humans, we still understand what kind of personalities humans have." Dolores's eyes revealed a trace of charm. "If Sir City Lord needs it, our Fox Clan's girls are very passionate." Humans always drooled over the Fox Clan's girls, but Chu Tian clearly did not mean this. Dolores also knew that this was not what he meant, but she had to say it like this, making it seem like it was very ambiguous. If it was a normal man, they would have been tempted. This Fox spirit. Chu Tian pretended to be a fool and gave a laugh. The Fox Clan is very smart and capable, having a keen sense of profit. With a bit of training, you'll be born merchants. We'll do a lot in this forest, and what you'll have in the future will definitely surpass your current imaginations. Miracle Commerce's business was becoming bigger and bigger. Even if the young miss was outstanding, it would be hard for her to take care of everything. Miracle Commerce needed a group of smart and reliable people to help them, so the Fox Clan was very suitable for Miracle Commerce. But because the Fox Clan valued profit, if you could buy them, others could buy them too. This clan could not be completely assured. But coincidentally, the Fox Clan in front of them were different. They believed in the demonic god religion, and the little fox was their highest spiritual leader. Even if the little fox didn't listen, it was still connected to Chu Tian. Without Chu Tian, it wouldn't exist. Unless they abandoned their faith, they wouldn't betray them. Faith was a kind of spiritual binding power, not to mention that their cultivation technique was related to their faith. If they abandoned the demonic god religion, they would lose all their cultivation techniques. The Fox Clan was smart. They should understand the gains and losses. If Miracle Commerce had this group of smart Fox Clan members, whether it was in terms of research or business, it would definitely be a large help. Now everything had been arranged. Chapter 824. Luz did not know why. When he saw that young human, he had a bad premonition in his heart. What made him make this decision was not the poison in his body, but rather the methods of that human. He could break witchcraft. The 5 gnomes had clearly been controlled by the witchcraft, but the witchcraft was still in their minds, so the shaman sorcerer had lost control of them. This made Luz feel very uneasy. The shaman sorcerer's witchcraft curse could not be broken. This was where the shaman sorcerer's confidence came from. Now the truth was in front of him. Not only had the witchcraft been broken, he had also seen through the shaman religion's plan. The gnome Clark was already making preparations. Like this, the shamans were in a disadvantageous position. This battle that they had a 90% chance of winning had been reduced by at least half. Luz's ancestors had come to the Green City area, and he had been a native shaman since his father's generation, so he did not have much contact with the Savage Highlands. If it wasn't for the Savage Highlands sending High Priest Mars, the two of them would have become two different powers. This was something that the human had calculated very accurately. Although Mars had absolute authority in the religion, and all the shaman priests had to listen to him, the local shaman sorcerers made up the majority of the Greenland shamans. Rather than saying they were afraid of High Priest Mars, it would be better to say they were afraid of the giant hidden in the Savage Highlands. When the Savage Highlands were enraged, the little Greenland shamans were not worth mentioning at all. Due to the fear of this giant, the Greenland shamans had no choice but to accept Mars' leadership, becoming a power placed in Green City by the Savage Highlands. If it went according to normal development, the shaman sorcerers would continue to erode the gnomes and finally control Green City. Who would have thought that the gnomes would suddenly rely on the Eternal Forest? This made the Savage Highlands very angry. In order to prevent the Eternal Forest from controlling the city, they decided to destroy Green City. The Greenland Shaman's Foundation was in Green City, so without Green City, they would be greatly affected. The gnomes were not weak, so if they went all out against the gnomes, the shamans would have to pay a heavy price. Not to mention that Green City already belonged to the Eternal Forest. The strength of the elves was not something the shamans could imagine. Luz could already vaguely feel that they had become a chess piece for the forest giants. A chess piece used to test the Eternal Forest bottom line. A chess piece that could be sacrificed at any time. Luz made his decision after thinking for a long time. He said to the shaman sorcerers beside him, "Have Priest Corell and Hilton come over. I have something to discuss with them." Priest Corell and Hilton were Luz's trusted aides and were the main leaders of the Greenland shamans, so he had to discuss this matter with them. After Chu Tion brought Dolores and Clark away from Luz, Clark said in a slightly worried voice, "You're letting Luz go like this? He is not a character that is easy to control. We've managed to regain a bit of an advantage with great difficulty. So if Urs notices this, perhaps Green City will fall into a disadvantageous situation." Clark now had a whole new level of respect for this young man. Chu Tion had only been in the Green City area for a week, and he had only studied the situation of the large powers and the information of their main members before arranging today's plan. It was bold and radical. If it really succeeded, it would greatly reduce the pressure, but if it failed, Green City would lose the initiative. This was because once the shaman sorcerers noticed it, the gnomes would find it hard to carry out their plans and actions. Damn, that damn old gnome, he actually doesn't believe me? Chu Tion's face was filled with disdain as he said to Dolores beside him, "Do you believe me? Sir City Lord has broken the shaman's witchcraft. This has dealt a large psychological blow to Luz and made him doubt the effectiveness of the shaman's witchcraft. The poison that Sir City Lord has given him is a threat to Luz's survival. There is no one in this world that is willing to die." Dolores seemed like she had already thought it through. The most important thing is that Sir City Lord has cleverly used the shaman sorcerer's internal differences, especially the Highland shamans represented by Mars and the Green City shamans represented by Luz. This relationship is not obvious normally, but in this special time, there are many things that can be done. So I think this plan can be tried. Chu Tion said with a nod, "After I become the City Lord, you will be the City Lord's assistant." Dolores revealed a look of joy as she immediately thanked him. Clark was very embarrassed on the side. This human already treated the City Lord's position as his, which made him feel a bit uncomfortable. Even if this human had some skills, humans were still humans in the end, and gnomes would not be convinced by humans. What should we do now? The shamans have pretty much been dealt with. We need to guard against other powers trying to fish in troubled waters. According to what I know, other than the shamans, the most troublesome ones in Green City are the undead religion and the druid religion. That's right. Clark's expression turned serious again. Although he was a bit unconvinced by the human in front of him, this was related to the survival of Green City, so he did not dare be too careless. The founder of the undead religion is a lich from the Dragon's Ridge, Segistur. This lich is very strange and mysterious, almost never showing himself. Even the necromancer priests under him are very strange, so we can't predict their movements like the shamans. It's simply impossible to guard against them. What about the druids? The druids are different from the shamans and the undead. The druid religion is a very loose but widely spread religion in the forest of chaos. The druids gathered around Green City should not have any background, but they are unruly and don't listen to discipline, turning a blind eye to Green City's rules. They have been doing things their own way for a long time, which gives me a headache. It's like this. The gnomes really didn't have any prospects. A good city was actually turned into this by these foreign powers. It was no wonder they had to rely on the eternal forest. Dolores asked, "Our main enemy this time is the shamans. Although we can't rule out the undead and druids taking advantage of the chaos. If we make plans against them at the same time, I'm afraid it will scatter our energy and it will be disadvantageous to the overall situation." You're right. Chu Tian did not plan on eliminating all the trouble at once. After all, with Green City's current strength, it was not enough to fight 1 against 3. He asked Clark, "How many green protectors does Green City have?" There are over 3,000 in total, with 2,000 being weakened by a strange disease. The rest need to guard the passages and passes, so I'm afraid there is no way to transfer them. Strange disease? Chu Tian slightly knit his brows. Take me to have a look. Clark brought Chu Tian to an open-air temple in Green City. This was one of the places where the green protectors were cultivated. There were several hundred green protector saplings that were currently growing under the light of the green altar. Other than that, there were several hundred giant green protectors that had been moved here. They were all complete, but they could no longer be used. The green protector was a very powerful synthetic life form. It was created by the gnomes from the ancient war trees and was controlled by the green religion's priests. It could be considered one of the gnomes' greatest inventions. Each green protector could be used for 1,000 years. When Green City was at its peak 200-300 years ago, there were around 20,000 green protectors, which was enough to cover the entire territory, making it impossible for outsiders to invade. Now, there were less than 3,000 green protectors, and 2,000 of them were sick. Otherwise, how could the shamans have this much courage? There was a spring of life in the center of the temple. This was not normal spring of life. It was something the green religion priests had blessed and refined with the power of nature. Each drop was equivalent to a barrel of spring of life water. So it was definitely a priceless treasure that had a very good effect on recovering injuries. These green protectors with strange diseases were now in a bad state. They were like dying trees with withered leaves. Although the gnomes did not hesitate to use the extremely pure spring of life water to water them, it could only slow down the speed of their death, and there were no signs of it turning around. Sir Clark, why did you bring a human here? This is my clan's important place, and it hides our clan's secrets. How can we let a human spy on us? No matter where he went, he wouldn't be welcomed as a human. The gnome priests all looked at him with hostile gazes. Chu Tian was too lazy to care about them, as he used his divine sense to enter the green protector's body. He could vaguely feel that the green protector was filled with a strange energy, and it was this energy that was suppressing the green protector's vitality like a seal. Clark comforted the other gnomes, telling them not to be impatient. Since they didn't have any hope, why not let this fellow try? The gnomes were very knowledgeable. If any gnome priest was placed in the human world, they would at least be great scholars or even scholars with the title of Kingdom Scholar. At least in this forest, there was no group more knowledgeable than the Green Forest Gnomes. Even this much intelligence couldn't solve this problem. Perhaps they would have to invite a sage to solve it, and it would have to be a sage specializing in plants and life. Such a young human. How could he be a human titled sage? The gnome's eyes were filled with disdain and disdain. Chu Tian withdrew his hand. This is a slow death energy curse. I think it was done by a lich. This fits their style. Dolores asked in a curious voice, "Is there a way to cure them?" There is, but with normal methods, it would take quite a bit of effort, because these life forms have been deeply corroded by the curse. I'm afraid they won't be able to recover in a short period of time, so they won't be able to make it in time for this battle. Chu Tian hesitated for a few minutes before taking out a small bottle that was filled with a dark red liquid. He gave the bottle to Dolores. Pour this into the water of life, and then water them with the water of life. The gnomes were all stunned. What did this human want to do? Dolores was about to do this, but she was stopped by several white bearded gnomes. They looked at the fox girl and the human with wary eyes. One was a heretic, and the other was a sly human. Only the heavens knew what these two wanted to do. Clark gave a gentle cough. Let them try. There's no better way anyways. Dolores glared at the gnomes before pouring the contents of the bottle into the water of life. Almost in an instant, the entire spring water was covered in a layer of dark red, as if there was a strange energy inside. Dolores could feel the energy in this place. She looked at it with a questioning gaze. Chu Tian nodded. Water them. She immediately poured the water on the half-dead green protector. An unbelievable thing happened. The moment the light red droplet landed on the green protector's body, there was a sizzling sound. Wherever the water droplet touched, the gray color disappeared, and the place it touched was filled with vitality. Those withered leaves were instantly filled with vitality. The gnomes were all stunned. What was going on? This was completely incomprehensible. Chu Tian revealed a pained expression. The divine blood could break any curse, and this spring water from the spring of life could revive the green protectors, so naturally it would have a good effect. Chu Tian did not have much divine blood on hand. This thing could be used to refine strong divine blooding corpses, so using it like this was a bit too extravagant. But the effect was immediate. Before long, many of the green protectors would completely recover, and this new battle strength would be enough to stabilize the rear. Chapter 825. Chu Tian's plan was unexpectedly smooth. At least it was very smooth at the beginning. Chu Tian's beast-repelling talismans were very effective, driving away most of the prey in the native hunting area. This caused the number of demon beasts to decrease by a large amount. Not to mention the daily harvest, it was not even a fifth of what it was a few days ago. This was simply adding hail to snow. Now, even the tribes that lacked food were beginning to worry seeing this situation. Those tribes that had already started to starve were now running around like ants on a hot pan. The large tribes began to study it. There had to be some kind of geological change in the forest. It could be a natural energy fluctuation, a change in the spiritual vein, or a natural disaster. Of course, it could also be a man-made disaster. In short, there was less prey. Living in the forest of chaos, it wasn't good to have too many demon beasts around. It could easily threaten the tribe's safety. Moreover, areas with a high density of demon beasts would increase the chances of high-level demon beasts appearing, but it wasn't good to have too few demon beasts either. The locals relied on hunting, and the forest environment was not suitable for farming. The current situation was very dangerous, and it was unknown how long it would last. There were already several tribes that couldn't hold on any longer. Move away. This was not a small matter. This was not something that could be decided in an instant. The forest of chaos was filled with dangers, especially in the depths of the forest. There were many powerful demon beast territories, as well as many low-key but dangerous tribes. There were also many fierce forest robbers, and all kinds of dangers were hard to predict. Who didn't want to live a stable life? Who would want to embark on a dangerous path with an unknown future? Not to mention that even if they moved away, they still had to make preparations. They would need to spend at least 10-15 days exploring their new living environment and prepare enough rations for the journey. If they did this, their tribe would have died long ago. Since things had reached this point, there was only one method: steal. In this savage land, using force was always the best way to solve problems, and it was the basic way to survive. If there was no food, they would steal food, and if there were no resources, they would steal resources. This was the natural order of the forest races, and it was also why the Dark Forest Law was so prevalent. When two tribes were together, the other side wouldn't move against you now, but that didn't mean they wouldn't move against you forever. If there was a famine or some other reason, two tribes that had a good relationship with each other would instantly fight. Those who didn't have food would snatch food, while those who had food would be wary of suspicion, or perhaps they would take advantage of the situation and attack the other party first to prevent future troubles. In short, this matter had already become a tradition in the Forest of Chaos. The entire forest was filled with the sound of knives being sharpened. It was like a barrel of gunpowder exploding. An unprecedented battle was about to erupt. Chu Tian's plan could be said to be successful up to this point. But before the second step could be carried out, an unexpected change occurred. Hushao Forest, a large fox tribe to the southeast of Green City. They had around 200,000 people and had lived here for 43 years, so they could be considered an old tribe. The Tiger Tribe warriors raised their weapons and roared out. This tribe had already begun to gather their troops. The Tiger Tribe's chief decided to personally lead 30,000 elite warriors to launch a sneak attack on the Lizard Tribe not far away. The Lizard Tribe lived in the wetlands and had the habit of storing food. As long as they were eliminated, it would solve the tribe's urgent need. When the Tiger Tribe people were busy gathering their troops, a strange figure appeared in front of the Tiger Tribe's gate. This was a goat tribe spirit beast with an ugly old face. He was wearing a large robe, and his hands and neck were covered in bone ornaments. He was also holding a long staff in his hand, looking very strange. "Who are you? You actually dare charge into the Tiger Tribe?" Before he even finished speaking, the goat tribe waved his hand, and several Tiger Tribe men fell to the ground, foaming at the mouth and twitching. No one knew what they had done. This goat tribe person swaggered into the Tiger Tribe. But since he charged in like this, he naturally attracted the attention of many people and was immediately surrounded. The Tiger Tribe chief came out and coldly looked over. "Shaman Sorcerer? What are you doing here?" The Shaman Sorcerer gave a laugh. "I'm here to show the chief the way." "Show the way? What way?" "The Tiger Tribe wants food, so attacking our neighbors is not a good idea. How we do things is not up to you swindlers to tell us what to do. Why don't you take a longer view?" The Shaman Sorcerer ignored him and suddenly said, "Green City has stored food for several decades, so why can those gnomes live in the city and have large amounts of food while you guys can only hide in the forest? In my opinion, we should directly attack Green City and take over Green City. At that time, not to mention a temporary problem, we won't have to worry about food for 3-5 years." The Tiger Tribe chief's face fell. "What did you say?" "The ogres, lizard men, snake tribes, and the southern tribes have all come to an agreement and are prepared to attack Green City together to steal food." The Shaman Sorcerer said this before turning around. The gnomes and the green religion have completely declined in the past few decades, so this is the best time. As for whether the Tiger Tribe wants to join, it will be up to the chief's decision. Green City's acting city lord. The gnome Clark had a worried frown on his face. The gnomes were related to the elves, but they were not a mix between the elves and other races. The gnomes were an independent race, a branch of the elves in the ancient times, belonging to the lesser elves. It was like the relationship between the halflings and humans. Their bloodlines were very similar, but they had already evolved into two different races. The gnomes were around the same height as the dwarves, and their other characteristics were similar to the elves. The gnomes had a very smart mind, and they liked to study knowledge and truth, studying profound source energy arrays. Although they loved nature like the elves and didn't like fighting, they were not as inflexible as the elves. The gnomes had a very good strength in the forest. When the gnomes in this area were at their peak, there were several million of them, and they were divided into several dozen tribes. Although they were all independent, they had a common belief, which was the green religion. The city the gnomes spent 500 years to build was this Green City. The gnomes had a good strength, but compared to the true giants of the forest, they were still lacking. Those giants didn't want to touch the other side's sensitive nerves, so they didn't directly take Green City. They just thought of ways to slowly nibble away at it. The Lich from the Dragon's Ridge brought the undead religion. The spirit beast from the Savage Highlands brought the shaman religion. The druids who didn't like fighting were inexplicably drawn in. After several decades of fighting, the The strongest green religion had already been destroyed. When the gnomes finally felt that they couldn't control this city anymore, the Eternal Forest's elven king threw out an olive branch to the gnomes, willing to accept these close relatives. Clark and the gnome elder didn't even think about it before agreeing. The gnomes did not build Green City to fight for fame. Rather, they just wanted to build a home for the gnomes to peacefully study in. Who would have thought that after this home became rich, it would attract so many greedy eyes? Compared to the Dragon's Ridge and the Savage Highlands, joining the Eternal Forest was the best result for the gnomes. The Eternal Forest's elves were close relatives to the gnomes, and the elves were gentle and kind, so they wouldn't make things hard for the gnomes. The Elven King even promised that the gnomes could continue to study and live in Green City, no different from before. The gnomes had no desire for power and wealth. It didn't matter who was the master of the city. It was fine as long as they didn't drive the gnomes away. Clark was very happy to complete the agreement with the Elven King. The Eternal Forest had already announced that Green City would be incorporated into their sphere of influence, and they would be protected by the Eternal Forest from now on. The gnomes were filled with anticipation as they waited. As long as the Eternal Forest stationed a strong elven army in Green City and sent a person with enough prestige to become the Green City Lord, would the shaman religion and the undead religion still be this arrogant? Even if they had the Dragon's Ridge or the Savage Highlands behind them, the Eternal Forest had already taken the initiative in Green City. After so many days had passed, there was no news from the Eternal Forest at all. Not long after, a secret letter was sent into Clark's hands. When Clark opened the Elven King's personal letter, he almost jumped into the ceiling. Green City's position was too special, and there were many large influences involved, so it was easy to cause disputes. So the Elven Council did not agree, which meant there was no hope for the Elven army. But the kind Elven King gave Green City a city lord. Clark was disappointed, but he thought that the gnomes still had a bit of strength. If the elves could send several peak experts here, even without the Elven army, they would be able to deter thieves. Who would have thought that the Elven King would give Green City's city lord to a human he had never heard of before? Weak, no fame, and a human. Clark was so angry that he almost fainted. There were no human powers in the Forest of Chaos, and all the humans that came here were outsiders. Outsiders meant that they had no foundation here. A human without any foundation coming to this complicated Green City to be the city lord wasn't a child's play. Even if the gnomes obeyed, would the other races obeyed? When Clark was anxiously thinking of how to solve this, a gnome suddenly ran over. Acting City Lord Clark, something has appeared in the forest again. What? There were quite a few things that had happened in the forest recently. There was famine, plague, and various disasters. Although there was no direct evidence, Clark believed that these were all done by those fellows. They just wanted to create chaos, giving the Eternal Forest's influence more resistance. This gnome adjutant said with a head covered in sweat. There are several tribes that have formed an alliance because of food, preparing to attack Green City. What? Clark felt his head grow bigger. These tribes actually wanted to attack Green City. Green City had 1.5 million residents, and the gnome population had decreased in recent years. This was originally a gnome city, and there weren't many gnomes left, but there were still around 600,000 that occupied a small half. The gnomes were good at handling and storing food. Green City had developed for so many years, so their food reserves were very rich. In normal situations, the locals would plunder from each other, and no one dared to attack Green City. This was because even if the green religion was weak, it was not something the locals could provoke. Who would have thought that they would ally together to attack Green City? This was simply madness. There were several tribes that had over 1 million people. Even if each tribe sent 50,000 people, it would still be a shocking number. Even if they couldn't attack Green City, they would still cause large losses to Green City. Clark could already smell an unusual aura behind this matter. If most of Green City was destroyed and occupied by the locals, the Eternal Forest would not be able to take over the city. At least it was like this from the perspective of some people. Chapter 8:26. After the green protectors were watered, The dead would quickly recover, and the leaves became greener than before. This terrifying recovery speed could be seen by the naked eye, and a pool of water of life could water 500 green protectors. The problem that the gnomes couldn't solve with a large amount of energy was easily solved by Chu Tian. Those green leaves were filled with vitality, and each leaf had traces of blood that were hard to see with the naked eye. It was like a pattern or an array that made the green protectors release a special aura, as if they were stronger than before. The green religion priests quickly inspected them. Forest divinity above. The vitality of these green protectors has been doubled. Each green protector's regeneration, recovery, and strength have all been greatly increased. These puppet creatures that had been contaminated by unknown curses and energy and were on the verge of death now seemed to have been baptized by a special energy, allowing their quality to improve by leaps and bounds. The green protectors could only be used for 1,000 years, but the gnomes could no longer detect an upper limit to their lifespan. Unbelievable! Clark looked at Chu Tian. After the green religion priests strengthened the green protectors 100 years ago, they couldn't find a way to strengthen the green protectors anymore, but you did it with a small bottle. Can you tell me what it is? As long as we can collect this thing, Green City's strength will increase greatly. Of course I can tell you, but I'm afraid you won't be able to collect it with your abilities. Chu Tian softly said, "This is the essence blood condensed by an ancient god before it died. The blood of a god can break all curses, so it can quickly restore these life forms." The gnomes and the fox girl were shocked. What did he say? Did their ears make a mistake? Chu Tian shrugged his shoulders and explained, "The green protectors are life forms cultivated from the ancient tree of war's fragments, so they should have the attributes of an ancient divine object. Therefore, they can absorb the blood of God very quickly, causing some changes. Not only will these green protectors become stronger in the future, they will also not be afraid of curses. Spiritual gods were legendary existences. How could Chu Tian even have this kind of thing? The most important thing was that this human could casually take out such a precious thing. Was it just to save a few normal puppet lives? This kind of action was like putting a top-grade crystal in a toilet. It was too extravagant. Dolores' eyes almost lit up. You actually have this kind of divine object on you. This doesn't count for anything. Chu Tian casually waved his hand, but his heart was still aching. However, he believed in the principle of not regretting it if he gave it away. Since he chose to act cool, he would act cool to the end. So he waved his hand and said, "All right, you can place the healed green protectors near the Necromancer Temple and let them bask in the sunlight." These cursed and polluted green protectors being placed in front of the undead temple was not as simple as just basking in the sunlight. This was a powerful deterrent to the necromancers. First, the necromancers' curses and pollution had been purified, which would be a large shock to them. Second, these healed green protectors were placed here to send a message to the necromancers. That was that Green City already knew that they were the ones who killed these green protectors. Third, these green protectors were enough to crush the entire Necromancer Temple to pieces. The several dozen necromancers stationed here shouldn't even think about escaping. This was a psychological warning and deterrence to the necromancers. It was equivalent to taking a hostage, making the troops they secretly raised outside not act blindly without thinking. This deterrent effect was enough to make the necromancers hesitate. Chu Tian just needed to calm the chaos as fast as possible, and the necromancers would not have time to react. There's still enough time. Chu Tian looked up at the cloudless sky. Let's take care of the last bit of trouble. I want to visit the druids. Clark never thought that Chu Tian would have this kind of idea. The druids will not give you face. They are all wild and unruly people. Ha ha ha, that's not certain. Green City's range was very large. Accurately speaking, Green City was a mountain area. It would take half a day to travel from one side of Green City to another on a flying demon beast. Just Green City area was 5-6 times larger than the Southern Summer Imperial City. The Southern Summer Imperial City had 7-8 million people, but Green City only had 1 million. Moreover, Green City was a 3-dimensional structure, with many living areas and castles built in the middle of the mountains. This was completely different from a flat human city, so Green City seemed to be one with nature. If one counted the natural city walls surrounding the mountain range, Green City was over 200 times the size of the Southern Summer Imperial City. It was almost the size of half the Imperial region. This was only a city. Green City had large, unbroken mountain ranges, wide lakes, wild demon beasts, and hidden immortal herbs in some corners. In short, whether it was the diversity of life or the changes in the landscape, it was not strange at all in this special city. This was the southeast part of Green City, and the entire area was covered in a quiet and lush rainforest. There were many towering mountain peaks that were like heaven-supporting pillars surrounding the area. Each pillar was covered in green plants that were arranged in a certain pattern, just like a natural array, in the depths of the rainforest. A shrine covered in moss stood in the middle of it. This was the Druids' temple. The Druids were a free power in the forest, not belonging to any power. The Druids' followers were very widespread. There were elves, spirit beasts, and in some areas outside the Forest of Chaos, there were even humans who believed in the Druids. Chu Tian brought Dolores and Clark through the rainforest to the temple. Roar! A warning roar came from the top of a tall rainforest tree to the side. A giant wolf was standing there, staring at the intruders with its dark green eyes. This was a level 3 shadow wolf. It was said to be a terrifying killer in the forest, able to silently kill any prey. The shadow wolf did not attack and looked at them with a clear and intelligent gaze. A human voice came from the large wolf's mouth. The Druids do not welcome outsiders. If you dare take another half a step forward, don't blame the Druids for being impolite. While speaking, there were already many Druids appearing all around. These Druids had turned into wild beasts. There were giant apes, giant bears, and earth dragons, all of which were very strong demon beasts. The most important thing was that these were not just wild beasts, they were wild beasts filled with intelligence. Their intelligence and the Druids' abilities made them stronger than normal wild demon beasts. Perhaps with just a single order, the Druid would tear the intruder to shreds in an instant. Dolores and Clark were both on guard as the killing intent around them was real. The Druids were a wild and unruly group. They respected nature and doing as they pleased, so they would do whatever they wanted. Therefore, it was hard for Green City's rules to restrict them. Even if they recognized acting City Lord Clark, the Druids would not show mercy. This group of Druids had a very strong strength. Although the Druids were very loose and closed off in terms of battle strength, they were even above the shaman sorcerers and necromancers. Chu Tian calmly said, "I came to see Prophet Yoda." The Umbra demon wolf suddenly jumped up, and its body released light in the air as it strangely turned into a human. When it landed on the ground, it had turned into a fierce wolf man. It roared at Chu Tian with a cold killing intent that made people's hair stand on end. Dolores and Clark both revealed looks of vigilance. Chu Tian faced the wolf-man druid with a mouth full of fangs, but he still acted as if nothing had happened. This was because he was clear that the people in the Divine Nature Temple would not know of Chu Tian's arrival. As expected, a low and deep voice came from inside. It's rare for an esteemed guest to visit the Druid Temple. Invite them in. Chu Tian did not even look at the aggressive wolf-man druid beside him as he swaggered into the Divine Nature Temple. Clark and Dolores hesitated for a few seconds before following behind Chu Tian. Hundreds of high-level druids in all directions turned back into their human forms. They all had murderous looks on their faces and were very unfriendly. How could these damn fellows dare to disturb the prophet? The Druid religion pursued nature and simplicity. Therefore, inside the Druid temple, there were almost no decorations. It was like a primitive and ancient house. There was only a huge statue of a goddess high up in the sky. It was the Druid's goddess of nature. Her huge wings were spread out to protect a throne in front of her, and on this simple throne sat a strange person. Chu Tian had never seen this race before. He was only a meter tall and had the green skin of a goblin. He also had the long ears of an elf, and his body was full of wrinkles like a gnome. He looked like a mixture of the three races. He wore a simple robe and sat cross-legged with a long staff on his lap. His entire body was enveloped in a layer of mysterious aura. This was the legendary druid Master Yoda. Dolores had never seen him before and had only heard of his name in rumors. Yoda was a prophet of the Forest of Chaos druid religion. A druid that could obtain the title of prophet was equivalent to a bishop, which was higher than a high priest. No one in Green City had seen Yoda fight, but it was said that before he moved to Green City, Yoda had turned into a dragon and fought with an ancient beast. What kind of terrifying creature was a dragon? If this rumor was true, then even the high priests of Green City added together would not be a match for Yoda. The most powerful part was not this. It was said that the druid prophets were different from normal people and had the ability to communicate with the spiritual gods to predict the future. If a large matter happened in the forest, as long as the prophet wanted to know, there was nothing that could be hidden from the prophet's eyes and ears. This was also the reason why Clark was very afraid of the druid religion. The druids were relatively low-key, but the threat they posed to the Green religion and Green City was not below the shaman sorcerers and necromancers. Not to mention that they were a group of unruly fellows, so anyone with this kind of influence in their territory would not be safe. Prophet Yoda would not easily meet people. Clark had only met Yoda twice in 30 years. This was also why Clark tried to stop Chu Tian when he learned that he wanted to visit the druids. This was because it was completely useless. If he disturbed these sensitive druids, it would attract unnecessary trouble. Who would have thought that Yoda would directly accept Chu Tian's request? This was another unexpected matter. Prophet Yoda opened his eyes. His head was very small, but his eyes were very large, just like a young animal. However, it was different from the innocent eyes of a small animal. Yoda's eyes were clear and sharp, as if he could see through everything. I'm called Chu Tian. I've admired the druid religion for a long time. Being fortunate enough to meet the legendary druid prophet, it really isn't easy. Chu Tian did not avoid Yoda's sharp eyes at all. But since it's such a coincidence, how about Master Yoda read my fortune? Impudent. With such disrespectful words, all of the surrounding druids were instantly enraged. The prophet had a very high position in the druid religion, and every druid grew up under the teachings of the prophet. This weak little human dared to be this rude to Master Yoda. This was simply looking down on the druid religion. This was absolutely unforgivable. Clark and Dolores' expressions changed. They didn't expect Chu Tian to come to the druids' temple and make such a request to their prophet in front of so many druids. Chapter 8:27. Chu Tian had made a mistake. It couldn't be said that it was a mistake. The plan itself was not a problem. He would first cut off the food of the large tribes, and when they were begging for a miracle, the Fox tribe would take this chance to release the news of the mysterious human merchant. When these natives heard that the Minotaurs in the Minotaur Valley, because they traded with this human merchant, not only did nothing happen to them during the famine, but they even ate and drank, while every day they would definitely go to the Minotaur Valley outside to investigate the situation. Who didn't know that the Minotaurs were the stupidest and were the first to starve to death? Now that they were eating and drinking, how could the other tribes not be jealous? The human merchant was very resourceful. No matter how much food they needed, they would be able to supply it. On one hand, he could supply high-quality food, and on the other hand, he could cut off other sources of food. These locals would definitely be tied down by Chu Tian in the end, and Chu Tian's goal would be achieved. The problem now was that when Chu Tian had just started the first step of his plan, and before he could even start the second step, Dolores had already rushed over. There was a very urgent piece of news that over 10 tribes were working together to attack Green City. The situation is not good this time, Dolores said with a face of worry. It's like we've smashed our own feet with a rock. No, it's not right. Chu Tian knit his brows and thought about it for a few minutes. This can't be right. These tribes normally don't interact with each other and are suspicious of each other. How could they form an alliance in just 2-3 days? This doesn't make sense. Dolores had already noticed this suspicious point. Although Green City's gnomes are very weak, they are not something these normal tribes would dare challenge. I also suspect that there is a mastermind behind this. Chu Tian nodded. There was no need to doubt it. This was certain. Chu Tian had already been in the Fox clan for a week, and he already had a good understanding of Green City. This city's manager and founder were all gnomes. Although the gnomes were not as strong as the elves, they could be considered one of the most knowledgeable races in the forest. The gnomes were different from the wood elves who had no desires. The gnomes were strict by nature and had a strong thirst for knowledge. Therefore, the gnomes had high attainments in source energy arrays. They had high standards in alchemy and talisman making. The reason Green City could maintain its rich state for several hundred years was because the gnomes' production had brought wealth to the city. The gnomes' equipment could be said to be very elite. Adding in the gnomes' talismans, along with the traps and various defensive facilities, it would make Green City a city that was hard to conquer. If my guesses aren't wrong, the person behind this is most likely in Green City. These locals can't conquer Green City, so they can only work together. Chu Tian asked Dolores, "With your intuition, who do you think is the most suspicious?" Dolores said without even thinking, "The shaman religion or the undead religion." Chu Tian said with a slight nod, "We need to make a trip to Green City." "Why are we going to Green City?" "Of course it's to see the acting city lord." Chu Tian was an outsider, and it was hard for outsiders to enter Green City, so he needed the Fox clan's help. Dolores had a common interest with Chu Tian now, so of course she agreed without even thinking about it. The demonic god religion had a bit of influence in Green City. Although the Fox clan was small, the Fox people had good brains, so they had a few stores in the city that mainly sold materials. Chu Tian disguised himself as a Fox person and was led by Dolores, so it was much easier for them to enter Green City. Green City had already been established for 500 years. This was not considered too old in the Forest of Chaos, and this city had always been under the control of the Green Religion. The Green Religion was a religion that came from the elves, mainly believing in the forest god. The gnomes at their peak had over 1 million people, so they could be considered a large influence. In the last few decades, the Green Religion had quickly declined. The new druid warriors, necromancers, and shaman sorcerers were running amok in Green City, and they were already a serious threat to the gnomes. The gnomes were still the masters of Green City in name, but they had already been divided. They were being held back by these 3 religions and adding in the several decades of chaos. The Green Religion's influence had quickly declined. Chu Tian was currently standing in front of Green City. This is Green City? It really is a bit different from what I imagined. The cities in the Forest of Chaos were not something the Southern Summer Country could compare to. Even the Southern Summer Imperial City could not compare to 1/10 of this place. When Chu Tian saw Green City, his first impression was it was grand, natural, and picturesque. Most of the cities in the Forest of Chaos did not have walls, so walls did not have much meaning in defense. Although the Green City in front of him did not have walls, because it was built in the middle of a mountain range. The mountain range surrounding it was a natural wall. If he did not personally see it, it would be hard to imagine that a city like this would suddenly appear in this rugged mountain range. Green City did not have many people, but the area it covered was several times larger than the Southern Summer Imperial City. The entire city was scattered in the middle of the mountain range, so the distribution was very interesting. If one looked at it from a macro perspective, it was like a trapezoid shape. Large amounts of castles were scattered. Some were built at the foot of the mountain, some were built at the waist of the mountain, and some were built at the top of the mountain. Sometimes there were 2 castles in the middle that were separated by a several hundred-meter deep mountain stream that was only connected by a drawbridge. There were countless open areas in the middle of the mountain range, which were large amounts of planting and breeding areas. There was a main peak in the middle of the mountain range. It was originally a towering mountain, but the top half of it had been cut open and turned into a giant white castle. Half was a mountain and the other half was a city. Sitting at the peak of the mountain range, surrounded by clouds, it was like a city in the sky. This was a very special place. The city built by the gnomes was completely different from the humans. In the large cities that humans lived in, the streets were orderly and the tall buildings were scattered. They were tightly packed together and were surrounded by walls. Green City's appearance was completely different. The entire city was made up of over 100 large and small castles, and each castle could be considered a small city. The castles surrounded the mountains in layers, forming a trapezoid shape. Although they were very loose, they were still very orderly. If a human city was a flat structure, then this city would be a three-dimensional structure. The entire Green City was perfectly integrated with nature. These cities that were cut from the mountains or built out of thin air looked disorderly on the surface, but each building in Green City was very unique. The spiritual energy here was very rich, and there were countless spirit veins gathered here, giving birth to countless heaven and earth treasures, but there were no fierce beasts. This was very rare in the Forest of Chaos. In this endless mountain range, it was unknown how many precious mines were hidden. It was definitely a good place for long-term development. Ha ha ha. Chu Tian gave a few loud laughs. A city in the mountains, a mountain in the city, a forest surrounding a river surrounding a mountain range, and a mountain range surrounding a city. My city looks very good, but I see that the city has not even been developed by 10%, and the entire mountain range has not even been developed by 2%. I'm prepared to connect all of this together and create a large city-state that can hold several tens of millions of people, making it the largest city in the Forest of Chaos. What do you think? Sir City Lord, you seem to be happy too early. Dolores rolled her eyes and disagreed with Chu Tian's grand ambitions. Don't forget, your city will be captured by a group of people. It might even turn to ashes in a few days. Those locals? Hey, when would Great Master Chu Tian place them in his eyes? But speaking of this city was indeed better than imagined. The city the gnomes used 500 years to build had been taken advantage of by Chu Tian in the end. Not only was this place rich in spiritual energy, it was also in the center of the Forest of Chaos, making it the most suitable base for miracle commerce. If Chu Tian could gain a foothold here, he could use this place as the center and allow the company to expand. At that time, the Dragon's Ridge, the Titan Mountain Range, the Savage Highlands, the Eternal Forest, or the distant Western Sea, or the dark underground world, would Chu Tian properly deal with them? The Forest of Chaos had the potential to become an empire. Of course, the premise was that they could unify this area, which was not an easy matter. Let's enter the city. Green City did not just have a natural mountain barrier. There were also many natural passages that could enter Green City from all directions. Dolores led Chu Tian through a passage covered in white moonlight stones. Not only were there shrubs and grass on both sides, there were also many tall trees. What surprised Chu Tian the most was that there was a type of large tree that had the appearance of a human. It had thick arms and a huge spear in its hands. It was like a 10-meter-tall giant guard that was motionlessly guarding the passage. What is this? Chu Tian was a bit surprised. This thing looked like a tree ant, but it was definitely not a tree ant, because Chu Tian could feel that this thing did not have a will and was a giant puppet life form. This is the Green Protector, Dolores explained. The Green religion studied the remains of the ancient war trees and finally cultivated a powerful life form. 100 years ago, Green City was filled with these powerful warriors, but after being attacked several times, they were all lost. In the last 10 years, there have been several disasters, and a large number of them have died, so there aren't many left. Chu Tian continued walking with Dolores. There were at least 3 layers of barriers protecting this valley. There was a reason why Green City could stand in this place. With these green protectors and the defenses of the passage, Green City could stop large forest powers from invading. As long as it wasn't a giant like the Eternal Forest, Green City could protect itself. Of course, that was the previous Green City. The current Green City was very weak, and it was very bad with internal and external troubles. Chapter 828. Yoda's clear and sharp eyes were as calm as a water mirror. There was not the slightest ripple or undercurrent. He gently waved his hand, and the surrounding druids all quieted down. Although there were some dissatisfied growls coming from their mouths, no one dared to make a move. "Young human, I can feel that you are different from the others." Prophet Yoda gently and calmly said, "Druid prophets can indeed feel a trace of fate, but unfortunately, this ability is limited. The stronger the fate, the more complex it is, and the more difficult it is to sort out. I may be able to see the life of a reptile, but I can't see the life of a dragon. As for you," Yoda's large eyes flashed with a trace of confusion. "Forgive me for speaking bluntly. Although you are standing in front of me, I can't feel your fate. It's as if you don't belong to this time and space. This is a feeling I have never experienced before." The legends were true. Did the Druid prophets really have this kind of magical ability? Chu Tian had read in ancient books that there were some ancient prophets in this world. They had an innate talent and could see things that people couldn't see. Chu Tian was just testing it out, but Yoda's words made him feel very shocked. Could it be that this fellow could really see something? Fate is a river, and we are all a speck of dust in it. Wherever we come from and where we go, it is all arranged by fate. We follow the current and cannot resist it. When Yoda said this, he suddenly revealed an interested expression. Now that there's a fish that has jumped into the river, not only is it trying to change its direction, wherever it goes, all the dust will deviate from its original path. I can sense that the fate of everyone who interacts with you has changed. Yoda's eyes fell onto Dolores and Clark before revealing an emotional expression. Green City's situation is already unpredictable. All the lines are in chaos. This was certain. If Chu Tian did not appear, the young Miss, Ying, Nangong, and everyone else would have followed their original path. Chu Tian's appearance had changed history, so Yoda's words were correct. Chu Tian was a bit surprised. There was really someone in this world that could see through fate. This Yoda's words made Chu Tian think of the sealed ancient gods in the Central State Trial Tower. They had also described fate as a river, and the stronger a life was, the more they could control their direction and position. But no matter how strong a person was, they could not change the direction of the river of fate. Clark and Dolores were secretly shocked. This druid prophet was even more profound than they imagined. The most important thing was that this prophet's evaluation of Chu Tian was very profound. Even if it was a giant dragon in front of him, even if Yoda could not accurately calculate its fate, he could still feel how strong it was against fate. He had no ability to see through Chu Tian at all. The fates of all living beings in this world were actually interconnected threads. When an unpredictable power was involved, it would cause these threads to become chaotic, and even the Druid prophet would temporarily lose his ability to predict. This young human was truly different. Perhaps this was the reason why Prophet Yoda wanted to see him. Chu Tian gave a sigh. "Since I can't calculate it, then I won't. Actually, knowing my own fate is quite boring. Shouldn't there be a few surprises in life?" Prophet Yoda smiled. "Mister is very open-minded. Since you've come to the Druid Temple, what advice do you have for the Druids?" "I don't dare give advice." Chu Tian did not keep him in suspense, and directly threw out the chip he had already thought of. "I've heard that before Prophet Yoda brought the Druids to Green City, they had fought with a terrifying ancient fierce beast. Prophet Yoda's injuries have not healed yet." Yoda did not reply, but this was indeed the case. The Druids did not come here with a special purpose. It was just the gnomes' prejudice against the Druids. Yoda's strength at his peak could be considered a first-class expert in the Forest of Chaos, but after the battle with the fierce beast, his strength had fallen quite a bit. Of course, even if he wasn't as strong as before, Prophet Yoda was still comparable to the high priests of the large sections. Chu Tian did not keep him in suspense. "I am the new city lord of Green City, and I admire the Druid culture. I can think of a way to cure the Prophet's injuries, but I hope the Druids can ally with Green City." The expressions of the other Druids fell. He could cure the Prophet's injuries? If it was like this, then this was a large matter. Prophet Yoda did not lose his composure at all. Even his eyes did not change. It was like this had nothing to do with him. Each druid is free. I have no right to make decisions for the druids. Chu Tian knit his brows. Why did this fellow not know what was good for him? Chu Tian could only lower his request. I can give the prophet an effective cure, but I don't want the druids to be involved in the battle between Green City and the shamans. Yoda calmly said, the druids love peace and will never be involved in a fight. As long as other people don't look at us with hostility, we won't look at others with hostility. All right, then it's a deal. Chu Tian was in a hurry and did not want to bargain with this prophet. As long as he promised not to be involved in this conflict, everything else was fine. Chu Tian was more assured with the druids. The people of this sect were very simple, believing in the god of nature and the god of druids. The druids did not have any lies and would not participate in a fight for power. Chu Tian coming to the druid temple to visit the prophet was just insurance. Since the prophet had personally promised something, Chu Tian believed the druids could do it. When Chu Tian left with the gnomes and fox girls, Yoda closed his large bright eyes. His brows wrinkled even deeper as he fell into silence. The druids looked at each other in blank dismay. They all knew that when the prophet did this, he must be thinking about something. Suddenly, Prophet Yoda suddenly raised his hand and his source spirit was released. Yoda's source spirit was very strange. It was actually a turtle shell. It was the kind of turtle shell used for sacrifices and divination. The druids all knelt down on one knee seeing this. They all understood that the prophet was going to make a prophecy again. The surrounding druid altars poured some kind of energy into the turtle shell, and words began to appear on the surface of the turtle shell. This was the druid prophet's prophecy. Only, before the words appeared, the entire turtle shell began to crack, and the cracks quickly covered the entire shell. With a thunderous sound, the entire turtle shell suddenly shattered into pieces. Pooh! Yoda spat out a mouthful of blood. Ah, Sir Prophet! The druids quickly went up to support him, but Yoda waved his hand. He looked very weak, but there was no danger to his life. It really wasn't good. As long as he was beside this human, any divination or deduction abilities would lose their effect. He already had no way of predicting anything in Green City. All the threads here were tangled together and constantly changing, causing the other threads outside to change as well. Only when they were far enough away would they be able to regain this ability. Yoda revealed a strange and complex expression. Was there really a person in this world that could disturb fate? Chu Tian had used less than 2 days, and everything had been arranged. Now he just had to wait for the shaman army and the local army to move. Around the 3rd day, the local army reached around 230,000 people, and they were all male elites from large tribes. This was already an army that could threaten the gnomes. The locals did not have any patience, and now they did not want to wait any longer. Kill! 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 Over 200,000 people gathered in the forest, covering an area of over 10 miles. They were filled with wild, killing intent and roars, just like a landslide, causing the birds and beasts in the forest to scatter. Several large tribe chiefs took the lead and decided to lead their subordinates into Green City to plunder. Several shaman sorcerers followed the army and used various shaman techniques on these people. For example, the berserk technique, the bloodthirsty technique, and etc. When these local warriors were buffed by the various techniques of the shaman priests, their battle strength naturally increased. Everything had been prepared. Green City is in front of us. Let us charge in and overthrow those weak gnomes. The local army could not wait any longer. Like a tide, they began to move towards Green City. Green City's passages were filled with barriers and green protectors. But the shaman religion had already promised that as long as the local army attacked, the shaman sorcerers would close the defenses from the inside. Several 100,000 locals would be able to charge into Green City. The gnomes' battle strength was not that strong, so these several 100,000 would be able to push them back. Not to mention that there was another group of shaman followers attacking at the same time, so there was hope of destroying Green City. Just when a dozen tribal chiefs led a tide of clansmen into the canyon, they suddenly found that all the barriers in the canyon had been opened, layer by layer, like a huge barrier. The two cliffs were filled with half-elf archers and half-elf priests. What's going on? Didn't the shaman say that they could close the gnomes' defenses? Although they were very dissatisfied with the current situation, they had already charged in. Even if Green City's defenses were not closed, they could only brace themselves and continue fighting. Who would have thought that when the locals were circulating their spirit energy to fight, something that no one would have thought would happen? When the locals' spirit energy began to circulate, it was like their bodies were burning. All the spirit energy went wild in their meridians, and they could not control it at all. What is going on? Damn, I've been poisoned. Everyone has been poisoned. Just what is going on here? The locals were shocked to find that almost all of their main forces had been poisoned. Before they could react, the Minotaur chief Arnold suddenly gave a roar, and his giant axe slashed down on a shaman priest. With a voila sound, the shaman priest was like a broken porcelain vase, instantly exploding into pieces of flesh and blood that filled the sky. The locals finally understood why everyone was poisoned when they saw this. It was because the Minotaurs had done something to their food. The Minotaurs were part of the locals, and the other tribes were not on guard against the Minotaurs at all, so they never thought that the Minotaurs would poison their food. Chapter 829. The gnomes were not xenophobic like the elves. They were a relatively tolerant race. As long as one could have a good relationship with the gnomes, no matter what race or religion they would all have a place in Green City. Foreign merchants could also temporarily stay in Green City. This kind of open policy made Green City prosper, but it also brought a series of troubles to Green City. Those cults could quickly develop in Green City and even threaten the gnomes' rule. Other than the power behind the church supporting them, the main reason was that it was too easy for them to infiltrate. There were several shaman altars in Green City and a large shaman temple. The shaman religion was mainly made up of spirit beasts and had developed very quickly in Green City over the past few decades. Now their influence was even faintly surpassing the green religion. Acting City Lord Clark anxiously paced back and forth. The surrounding tribes were preparing to attack Green City, which made him feel pressured. Therefore, he sent out a group of envoys early in the morning, hoping to resolve this problem. After all, with Green City's current weakness, it was clear that it couldn't withstand any more attacks. This negotiation was for stability. Green City was very sincere. But why hadn't the envoy returned yet? While Clark was feeling a bit uneasy, Sir Acting City Lord, an assistant, quickly charged in. Envoy. The envoy has been killed, and the bandits have gathered. What did you say? Clark angrily slapped the table. These damn fellows, getting an inch and wanting a foot, their greed knows no bounds. Do they really think that Green City is afraid of a mob like them? This assistant was very flustered. I think they are about to attack. We should deal with them as soon as possible. The gnomes were not a martial race, so there weren't many warriors in the tribe. The Green Protectors had suffered a large loss in the last few decades, and this wave of locals would cause a large amount of damage to Green City. Of course, this was not what the acting city lord was most worried about. What he was most worried about was the mastermind behind this plot. Plagues, famine, and riots. It was always wave after wave. When had the forest been peaceful during this period of time? Clark had always been suspicious of the identity of the mastermind behind this matter. After all, famine was one of the main causes of war, and when the locals were in danger, they took the chance to stir up chaos. This was not hard to explain. Clark powerlessly waved his hand. Have the clansmen prepare. Yes, if the Eternal Forest could accept Green City, you wouldn't need to worry about these matters. Sir Acting City Lord, there are people outside asking to see you. How could Clark have time to see them? When he was prepared to send them away, Clark's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Who is it? I'm not clear. It's a human and a fox. The fox seems to be the demonic god religion's priest Dolores. Human? Invite them in. Clark seemed like he understood something, and his brows knit together. Most of the gnomes did not know the truth and thought that the Eternal Forest army would arrive at Green City at any time. Only Clark and a few others knew that the Elven King had sent a human city lord, but this matter could not be spread. There weren't many races on the continent that liked humans. The gnomes were not an exception. What's more, humans were synonymous with outsiders here, which meant that they weren't even worth a fart in the local area. Even a powerful dragon couldn't suppress a local snake, not to mention that the other party was at most a flying mouse. How was it possible for him to inform such a large group of snakes? Clark sent away the people around him, and Chu Tian and Dolores walked in. Dolores politely gave a slight bow to the gnomes in front of her. Demonic god religion's priest Dolores greets acting city Lord Clark. Clark did not look at Dolores and looked at Chu Tian with a look of disdain. Humans had short lifespans, and this person looked very young, perhaps not even 20 years old among humans. He was no different from child. Even if the Elven King was irrational, he shouldn't have sent this kind of person to manage Green City, right? Clark said in a somewhat malicious voice, "Green City does not welcome human travelers. What matter does your excellency and Priest Dolores have come to see me for? I'm very sorry, I'm not a traveler." Chu Tian did not have any thoughts of hiding it at all. He took out the Elven King's token and secret letter and placed it on the table. "I am called Chu Tian. The Elven King has appointed me as Green City's City Lord." "You?" Clark's eyes popped out. "You can be Green City's City Lord?" "I think the Elven King is confused. I would rather surrender to the spirit beasts." These were not completely words of anger. Clark never would have thought that when he sincerely surrendered to the Eternal Forest would treat the gnomes like this. Letting a human who hadn't even grown hair be the City Lord? This was simply an insult to Green City and an insult to the gnomes. Green City's situation was this complicated. What could this human do? Chu Tian saw the anger on the gnome's face, and his heart was filled with helplessness. According to the original plan, Chu Tian was prepared to subdue a group of local tribes. With the support of these locals, he would come to Green City to replace the City Lord and move miracle commerce over. Because there was a change in the plan and the locals wanted to attack Green City, Chu Tian had to change the order and come to Green City first. Why does acting City Lord Clark think, "I can't be the City Lord"? Then what makes you think you can be the City Lord? With my knowledge, my talent, and my mind, I can do things the gnomes can't. Chu Tian said in a very shameless voice, "If acting City Lord Clark doesn't believe me, we can make a simple bet." Clark was stunned. "How do you want to bet?" "Within a month, I will eradicate all of Green City's internal problems, whether it is the shamans, necromancers, druids, or anything else." Chu Tian knew that he would be questioned if he was alone, so he could only brag to increase his reputation. "If I can do it, the gnomes must recognize my abilities. If I can't do it, you don't need to feel awkward. I will go to the Eternal Forest and resign from the Elven King." Clark revealed a look of disbelief. "Do you know what you're saying? Do you know what those shaman wizards and necromancers represent? It's just the savage highlands and the Dragon's Ridge. What is there to worry about?" Clark carefully looked over the human in front of him. Although he didn't believe this human could do it, from this person's calm expression, he was a bit calmer than he imagined. "All right, I'll bet with you." This was a task that was almost impossible to complete. The gnomes were being pressured by these foreign powers, so they became weaker and weaker, having no choice but to rely on the Eternal Forest. If Chu Tian could really solve these problems for Green City, why couldn't he be the City Lord? Of course, this was an impossible task. At this time, there was a wave of shouting coming from outside the discussion hall. Chu Tian was a bit stunned. "What is going on?" Clark knit his brows and hesitated for 2 seconds. "The envoy sent by Green City to negotiate with the tribes has been sent back after being killed. The clansmen are very excited and are naturally protesting, requesting to fight. I'm afraid this battle is hard to avoid." Chu Tian slightly raised his brows. "I want to see the envoy's body." "What do you want to do?" Clark was a bit vigilant. This gnome envoy died for Green City, so he should be buried in the forest temple, returning to the embrace of the forest god. Chu Tian said, "I just want to see the person who sacrificed himself for Green City. Perhaps I can find something from his body." "That's natural." Clark's brows slightly relaxed. This foreign human actually knew the green religion's beliefs and traditions. "All right, but the priest will be holding the funeral soon, so I'll give you at most 10 minutes. That's enough. Dolores looked at Chu Tian with a bit of astonishment. Why did this fellow want to see a corpse? Clark brought Chu Tian into the forest temple. This was a large natural cave, and the entire space was filled with all kinds of tree roots. There was an altar in the center with an intact corpse lying on it. Chu Tian found that the corpse's neck had stitches, so it should have been beheaded. His eyes slightly narrowed as he said, "What did you send him to discuss?" Of course, it was to discuss how to survive the famine. Clark's face filled with anger when he saw the envoy's body. The gnomes were even willing to open Green City's warehouse to borrow some food, but who would have thought that these damn fellows would be this greedy? Do they really think Green City is something they can break through? Chu Tian shook his head. Perhaps the envoy did not say that. I'm guessing that after he went to the locals, he must have used strong words and even insulted them. In the end, he angered the locals and was killed. What nonsense are you saying? Acting City Lord Clark had a bit of good impression of this human, but it was all gone at this moment. You dare question the gnome's strict faith? Chu Tian did not explain. His right hand suddenly released a faint light, and he drew a rune on the gnome's forehead. Under the effect of this rune, the gnome's body began to violently tremble. Acting City Lord Clark was already filled with rage. What did you do? Chu Tian softly said, "See for yourself." Suddenly, there was a sharp cry that came from the gnome's ear. There was a disgusting bug that came out, and Chu Tian casually pinched it in his hand. Dolores cried out in surprise. This is the shaman sorcerer's witchcraft insect. This is something that can control one's mind and thoughts. It should have been refined by some kind of witchcraft. Chu Tian looked at the struggling insect in his hand. If my guesses aren't wrong, this envoy had just left Green City when he was attacked. This insect was planted in his brain, and his mind was controlled to participate in the negotiations. In the end, he angered the locals and was killed, but he also angered the gnomes. Dolores was suddenly enlightened. This also means that the one behind the scenes is the shamans. That's right. Since we've locked onto the one behind the scenes, this matter is much easier to handle. Chu Tian's fingertip released a blue and white flame that turned the insect into ashes. Then let me experience this so-called shaman religion. Acting City Lord Clark was stunned. Chapter 830. Arnold destroyed a shaman priest. This was just the beginning, or rather it was an order, but it made the minotaurs go wild. These 3-4 meter tall monsters' eyes turned red as they panted. They all brandished wheel axes and giant hammers as they surrounded the other shaman priests, causing their expressions to fall. You dare attack the shaman priests? The shaman god won't let you off. The shaman god will use the most vicious curse to make you wish you were dead. The Goat Tribe shaman gave a mournful roar. This kind of threat was useless against the enraged minotaurs. Even though the shaman priests were very strong, there were only 5 shaman priests while the minotaurs had 5,000. This was a battle without any suspense. The shaman priests were not strong in close combat, and with a large group of enraged minotaurs charging at them, they didn't have any strength to resist at all. The shaman that had been threatening the minotaurs was instantly trampled into a pile of flesh and blood, no longer being able to see his original appearance. Arnold. The other locals all had ugly expressions. There was a tribe chief who couldn't help angrily shouting, "You shameless traitor, you actually betrayed the forest's allies. You won't have a good death." Idiot. Arnold's large face revealed a taunting expression. You don't even know that you've been used by others. Father is trying to save you. It's fine if you want to die, but do you want to implicate the surrounding tribes? The tribe chief angrily shouted, "What did you say? I have concrete information and evidence. Everything is the doing of the shamans." Arnold took out a broken banner. "This is something I found in the forest. There are shaman witchcraft techniques on it. It's the shaman sorcerers trying to reduce their prey. It's all a scheme." Arnold suddenly jumped onto a tall rock. "These despicable fellows want to use us as cannon fodder to attack Green City. Many of you have been controlled by the shaman priest's witchcraft, but you idiots don't even know it. The Minotaur's loud voice reverberated through the valley, making the locals speechless with stunned looks. At this time, the barrier was removed and a gnome army entered the valley. This Minotaur chief is right. The Green Religion priest at the front shouted. 3 days ago, the Green City envoys were affected by the shaman witchcraft. We have already investigated this. This conflict was caused by the shamans, so we have reason to believe that there are people controlled by the shamans among you. Arnold ordered the Minotaurs to capture the chiefs and high-level leaders of the tribes. What are you doing? Release our leader. The Green Religion priest looked at Arnold. Arnold said without any doubt, according to my observation, it's these people. The Green Religion priest took out a talisman and placed it on the tribe chiefs and high-level leaders. When the talisman was activated, most of them gave pitiful cries. Some people spat out insect eggs from their stomachs, and there were several tribe chiefs that had insects coming out of their orifices. This scene shocked everyone. What is this? The natives were given a fright. The shaman witchcraft is very sinister and vicious. It can take lives at any time and can control thoughts. These tribe chiefs have their thoughts controlled by witchcraft, but sometimes they don't even know it. I think all of you should have woken up by now. When the witchcraft was dispelled, although they suffered heavy injuries, there was no danger to their lives. The expressions of these native leaders became more and more unsightly. When they thought about how some of the thoughts and emotions that had arisen during this period of time were indeed very strange. They did not appear on their own at all, but were forcefully stuffed into their brains by some kind of power. Then they saw these bugs that had crawled out of their bodies. So it was like this, so it was like this. No wonder they'd gone crazy. No wonder they had lost their reason. No wonder the local powers could gather so quickly. Actually, a person with a bit of a calm head would not have made the decision to attack Green City. Even if the Green City gnomes were weak, they were not something these local powers could resist. This kind of battle was equivalent to sending themselves to death. Arnold loudly shouted, "This disaster is all the fault of the shamans. They did not hesitate to create a famine and chaos, causing our people to suffer heavy losses. Now they're leading us to attack Green City, using us as cannon fodder. How could there be such a thing in this world? In my opinion, blood for blood, a tooth for a tooth, will let the shamans taste the anger of the forest." The locals realized that they had been tricked, and they all angrily roared out. Green City is willing to work with the forest tribes to fight the evil shamans. A Green Religion priest promised, "We will use the name of the forest god. As long as the brave warriors of the tribes stop their horses at the edge of the cliff and stand on Green City's side to resist the shamans, Green City will not pursue any responsibility. Then, not only will Green City not hold you responsible, they will also provide you with enough food, allowing you to pass through this dangerous period." The priests swore in the name of the spiritual god. This kind of oath was reliable, and the locals did not have any worries. What are you still hesitating for? Arnold's large nostrils let out 2 white breaths. The evil shamans have harmed many Minotaur tribesmen, so the Minotaurs will take revenge for our tribesmen. Even if they were slow, they would still understand this now. This was why the moment the crisis erupted, the shamans appeared in the various tribes. Not only did they encourage the tribes to work together, they were even willing to help the locals fight. It turned out that all of this had been arranged beforehand. These forest tribes and chiefs had been toyed with in the palms of their hands. The locals were filled with rage. The poison the locals were poisoned with was not fatal. This was just losing the ability to use spirit energy for an hour. Most of them would recover their battle strength very quickly. Kill the shamans! Kill the shamans! One by one, the enraged chiefs responded, and then it spread to all the forest natives. When the gnomes saw this, they immediately opened the barrier. The large group of locals were like a stream of water as they wildly charged into Green City. High Priest Mars and the Shaman Temple felt the sky-shaking shouts. The locals are killing their way in this quickly? Green City's attention has been attracted by the locals. Even if a portion of them have been attracted, the shaman religion will have a chance. An army of several 100,000 plus the several dozen priests and 2,000 voodoo puppets. I don't believe we can't take down a trivial green city. But at this time, a large wave of flame arrows was shot at the shaman temple, piercing into the walls, tables, and even statues. The flames immediately ignited the surrounding objects. High Priest Mars' face sunk. The gnomes dare make a move before us? Go, release the voodoo puppets, and let them see the might of the shamans. The voodoo puppets charged out of the shaman temple like meteors. At this time, there were several thousand gnome archers and soldiers with 10 green protectors surrounding this place, wildly attacking the shaman temple. They suddenly saw a large group of sharp shadows charge out, and each one was covered in curse and witchcraft energy. The expressions of the several green religion priests fell. Be careful. These are the shaman religion's voodoo puppets. The gnome archers' archery skills were not inferior to the elves. After spirit energy was poured into the arrows, each arrow could only be seen as a flash of light. They were strangely fast and incomparably sharp. The voodoo puppets charging at the front were instantly cut apart by the light. The voodoo puppets are only SOSO. When the gnomes were a bit careless, the voodoo puppets that had been cut apart suddenly turned into poisonous insects that covered the sky. It was like a small dark cloud that instantly reformed in the middle of the gnome archers, turning back into the voodoo puppets and looking like they were not injured at all. The voodoo puppets were puppets that the shaman priests had spent a large amount of resources to refine. Their bodies were filled with curse and witchcraft energy, and before their energy was used up, they were almost immortal. A gnome gave a pitiful cry. The voodoo puppet raised it into the air with a single hand, and its body began to wither at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then it inflated like a balloon, and with an explosive sound, countless poisonous insects and poison shot out from its body. The surrounding gnomes were not spared. Too terrifying. The witchcraft and curses on these monsters were too strong. Marza walked out of the temple with a group of shaman priests. His white hair fluttered in the wind, and his skinny face looked like a gloomy skeleton. Green religion idiots, if you want to attack the shaman temple, you won't be able to do it with just these few people. The shaman priests controlled the voodoo puppets. The battle strength of 2,000 voodoo puppets was enough to destroy an army. These gnomes were the elites of the tribe, but it was impossible for them to block the shaman's attack. Since they've delivered themselves to me, this old man won't be polite. Marza decided to first destroy the elites in front of him, and then bring the voodoo puppets to destroy the gnome castle. Kill them all. Quickly retreat. Quickly retreat. The gnomes were forced to retreat again and again. The green protectors created a defensive barrier to cover their retreat. These few green protectors were of no use, so the shaman priests controlled the voodoo puppets to attack. Not long later, they broke through the big sister green protector and quickly chased after the escaping gnomes. Marzu's face was filled with taunting and ridicule, but this expression did not last long. Because the gnomes had retreated into the middle of the large group of green religion priests, Marzu's cheeks twitched a few times. He suddenly remembered that in the battle just now, the gnomes did not use the power of the green religion priests. There was only one possibility. They were pretending to be defeated to lure the enemy in. Come back. As soon as Marzu gave the order, the green religion priests made a move before the shaman priests. There were no vines flying in the sky or summoned tree demons. There was only an incomparably large source energy array activated by the green religion priests. This source energy array was something the shaman priest had never seen before, but what made the shaman priests incomparably shocked was that the witch puppet lost its balance as soon as it entered the source energy array, not even being able to stand properly. Following that, its skin and bones fell like mud, and those insects came out of its body with a sharp cry, as if they wanted to escape. However, when they fell to the ground, they did not even have time to struggle before they died. Almost in an instant, this large-scale source energy array killed several hundred voodoo puppets. This was enough to cause an incomparably large shock to the shaman priests. Chapter 831. Dolores admired Chu Tian a bit more. The shaman religion was a mysterious religion that originated from the savage highland spirit beasts. It was different from the demonic god religion's summoning and beast-taming techniques. The shaman sorcerers mainly used curse attacks, soul attacks, witchcraft, and insect poisons. This kind of strange insect controlling technique was definitely a high-level witchcraft technique of the shaman religion. The person controlled by this witchcraft technique was no different from a normal person. There was no way to detect it because there was no additional state to their mind, soul, or thoughts. This was purely controlling their thoughts from a physical level. The runes Chu Tian drew had not disappeared yet. Clark's face was filled with a bit of surprise. You can only use witchcraft to remove the shaman's witchcraft. This seems to be the shaman's method. It's just a small trick, not worth mentioning. The shaman religion was recorded in history, but in Chu Tian's era, this religion had already disappeared. Chu Tian had seen records of the shaman's witchcraft in an ancient book. This witchcraft did not need a special shaman cultivation technique. It was just a secret technique. Chu Tian had studied it a bit in the past. Although he was not proficient in it, it was more than enough to break a small insect. Since he knew who his opponent was, it was easy to deal with. I still feel that the famine happening around Green City is a bit strange. Dolores knit her brows. This famine was strange, but she couldn't find anything strange about it. In the past, unless there was a migration of beasts, a large-scale natural disaster, or a geological change, it would cause a change in the beasts living in the Greenland. There were no signs this time. It was a strange change. Clark was already suspicious of this. The shaman sorcerers set up an altar and used witchcraft to disturb the beasts, causing a series of changes. This is completely possible in theory. Only, we don't have any evidence, and we don't know when it started. Even if we tell them now, those tribes won't believe us. No wonder the shamans reacted so quickly. Father actually helped them. They had been preparing for several months, so they immediately grabbed the chance. This caused Chu Tian's plan to fail. This was too hateful. Speaking of this, the shaman religion's influence was not small. In the area around Green City, they had several 100,000 followers. Now, they were inciting the locals to unite. Perhaps while the locals were attacking Green City, the shaman religion would send their followers to attack. Like this, even if the green religion wasn't defeated, they would still suffer a large loss. I'm most worried about the shaman's witchcraft. Clark seemed to realize the seriousness of the matter. We don't know when the messenger was controlled by this kind of insect. It could be recently, or it could be even longer. Since the shaman sorcerer can control a half-elf, he can control more half-elves. This situation is an objective reality. Chu Tian carefully introduced the shaman's witchcraft. This kind of witchcraft would not directly kill the host. After it entered the host's brain, it would quickly take over the host's nervous system, as well as their emotions and thoughts. The host would be completely controlled without them knowing, and they would be able to eat and sleep normally. The people closest to them would not notice anything strange. These people who were controlled by the witchcraft, goo, were like time bombs. When the shaman religion needed to use these chess pieces, the shaman priests would use witchcraft to activate them. The host would instantly lose their ability to think and become a puppet under the control of the shaman's witchcraft. The shaman sorcerers did not need to completely control the host's thoughts and could use witchcraft to subtly change the host's thoughts. This was because emotions were a kind of spiritual energy, and spiritual energy could be created through material methods. Dolores and Clark were both dumbfounded. The shaman's witchcraft was mysterious and vicious, but outsiders knew very little about it. This foreign human was even more knowledgeable than the locals who had dealt with the shaman sorcerers for decades. This kind of witchcraft that could control one's thoughts was clearly a secret of the shaman religion. How did he know about it? No wonder. The shaman religion could develop this quickly. Not only did they have a large influence in the surrounding tribes, there were also several shaman temples in Green City. The problem was here. The local army had several 100,000 people. They had several 100,000 followers over the years. There were also over 100 true spirit realm shaman sorcerers as well as the core fighting strength of the shaman religion, as well as the puppets they had controlled in Green City over the years. This was a very terrifying strength. The local army had been formed for 3-4 days, and they had already gathered over 100,000 people. It was said that this number was still increasing, and it could reach several 100,000. Most of these locals had mobilized the adult males of their tribes. With this kind of effort and high efficiency, who would believe that the shamans weren't playing tricks on them? Once the locals attacked the city, the shaman religion's army would also attack. Adding in the cooperation of Green City, how would the gnomes deal with this situation? Also, if the shaman spirit beasts and the Green City gnomes fought, would the undead religion warlocks just stand by and watch? Even the druids were an unknown variable. Chu Tian had clearly pointed out all the stakes. Mister's insight is truly clear. Clark never thought that Chu Tian could see this clearly. He was sitting high up as the acting city lord, but he was this careless. His head was covered in sweat at this moment. Green City's situation is even more dangerous than I thought. The gnomes were proficient in research, but they were not good at diplomacy or military tactics. Now that the water was becoming muddier, he couldn't think of a way to solve it. Dolores was also shocked, not to mention Clark. Who would have thought that the situation would be this bad? Who would have thought that the situation would be this bad? Clark asked in a trembling voice. Then how many gnomes does Mr. think have become the shaman sorcerer's puppets? This kind of goo is very hard to refine, and it will consume the refiner's cultivation and vitality, so there won't be many of them. You don't need to worry about this. Chu Tian carefully considered it. Just follow my arrangements. The gnomes only need to stabilize Green City, and I'll take care of everything else. Could this situation really be taken care of? Clark already had no confidence in his heart. He could only believe in this outsider, a person that could become Green City's city lord. In the evening, the 150,000 elites of the forest gathered in the forest. The morale of the locals was high, and they were filled with killing intent. When they gathered, there would be locals joining in from time to time. Of course, these were all small powers that wanted to take advantage of the situation to loot Green City. The Allied Army Conference began. The ogres, tiger, leopard, lizard, snake, the various large tribe chiefs, and the high-level members of the various tribes all came to participate in this conference. These different-looking leaders all had angry expressions on their faces at this moment. Green City is too arrogant. They actually want to exterminate us and make us their slaves? These gnomes don't even know they are about to die. Do they really think they are still 100 years ago? We will quickly gather several 100,000 people. At that time, with the support of the shaman religion's witchcraft, our battle strength will increase by more than double. It will be easy for us to trample these outwardly strong gnomes. The entire Allied army was covered in a layer of strange rage, violence, and fanaticism. They were all impatient to charge into Green City and burn Green City to ashes, stealing all the wealth and food. Several goat race shaman priests stood in the corner with a smile of ridicule on their faces. The ox race's chief Arnold will lead 5,000 minotaurs to join the alliance. The locals were shocked. The minotaurs were very strong, and they were not inferior to the ogres, but they specialized in charging at the front lines. These 5,000 minotaurs charging together was enough to easily tear apart the weak gnome defenses. Arnold was the Minotaur tribe's chief, but he was actually personally participating in this mission. This Arnold was the youngest chief of the Minotaurs in 200 years. He was a typical blockhead with a fiery and straightforward personality. He was a Minotaur that couldn't be more traditional, but with the Minotaurs' personalities, they wouldn't play any tricks. Since Arnold had personally come, it meant that the Minotaurs also wanted to fish in Green City. More than a dozen tribal chiefs and a few shaman sorcerers received Arnold. One of the tribe chiefs said, "Arnold, you only took out 5,000 minotaurs. Isn't that too little? There are over 100,000 minotaurs in the Minotaur Valley." Another tribe chief followed up, "We will split the loot according to work. Whoever does the most will get the most." I'm afraid 5,000 minotaurs won't be enough. The Minotaur's reinforcements aren't just warriors. Arnold gave a simple smile. You don't lack warriors, so the Minotaurs will give you what you lack the most. What do we lack? Food. What? The various tribe chiefs were stunned. You're saying you'll give food? Arnold's large body moved to the side, and he pointed to the Minotaurs behind him. All the tribe chiefs looked over. Several thousand fully armed Minotaurs were pulling over a large pile of tin cans, giving them to the local soldiers one by one. The entire Allied army camp was covered in cheers. The various tribe chiefs were all stunned. What is going on? Arnold said with a laugh. A human merchant came to the Minotaurs not long ago, and this food was bought from him. There's enough good wine and meat, enough for us to fight our way to Green City. Human merchant? Where did this human merchant come from? How could he bring this much food into the forest? The local chiefs were all shocked, and their killing intent weakened by a lot. There were even some people who asked Arnold how to contact this human merchant. I don't know his background. Arnold shook his head. But if you need, I can help you contact him. The shaman priests looked at each other. They could see the shock in each other's eyes. One of the shaman priests pinched a seal and muttered an incantation. Roar. An ogre suddenly roared out. If we take down Green City, how much food can we not have? Why spend a large amount of money to trade with a human merchant? Not to mention, who knows how much food this merchant can provide? If we take down Green City, it will be enough for us to eat for 10 years. That's right. Attack Green City. Arnold, your food has come the right time. Once our soldiers are full, we will definitely take down Green City. At that time, we'll give you a portion. Chapter 832. Chu Tian stood far away on the short mountain, watching everything unfold. The 20,000 gnome elites had already surrounded the shaman temple. Not even a drop of water could trickle through. The array you gave the gnomes is too strong. Dolores's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when she saw hundreds of shaman puppets being disintegrated by the array. These shamans are completely useless after meeting you. I'm really curious. It's your first time coming into contact with shamans. How can you break their witchcraft? The difference in culture between us is not small, so it's hard for me to explain. Just think of me as a genius who can predict the future. Ha, ha, ha. If the other side was Ying, she would have gone crazy seeing Chu Tian's arrogant appearance. Even a young miss would give him a fierce look. Good, my genius, Sir City Lord. Dolores was not angry at all. Rather, she walked over to Chu Tian and massaged his shoulders. She used a charming voice to ask, I'm really curious. Just tell me, all right? I'm begging you. The fox girl's full body rubbed against him. Her breath smelled like orchids, and her devilish voice entered his ears. There weren't many people in this world that could endure it. How could Chu Tian not know what this fox girl was thinking? The shaman religion was a very strong religion, not only in the savage highlands and Green City. They also had influence in many areas of the Forest of Chaos, suppressing the demonic god religion for many years. If she could obtain a method to deal with the shamans from Chu Tian, would she need to fear these sinister and damned sorcerers in the future? Actually, witchcraft is a variation of an ancient technique, but it is just a small trick in the end, not being able to find the essence. As long as you can find a way to counter it, any witchcraft can be destroyed. Chu Tian said halfway. As for the specific method, I can't reveal it for now. You could just work for me in the future, and you'll naturally be able to learn anything you want. How could Dolores be satisfied with this kind of perfunctory answer? When Dolores was prepared to use the Fox Clan's charm technique to interrogate this fellow, there were suddenly shouts coming from a direction. Northwest direction. It should be the shaman believers attacking. However, they never thought that they would meet this kind of fierce resistance from the gnomes. This was because the locals used to restrain the gnomes did not have any effect, and the gnomes were focused on the shamans. So it was impossible for the shamans to attack. Arnold and the other forest locals might even use the gnomes to deal with the shaman believers after learning the truth, so it shouldn't be a problem anymore. As for the variable, the undead temple was already under control. The druids would definitely not interfere in the situation. If these two shaman factions didn't participate, then the other churches and forest factions wouldn't have the guts to fish in troubled waters. The only variable now was the shaman temple. After all, there were over 1,000 shaman sorcerers in the shaman temple and close to 100 shaman sorcerers with the title of priest. Adding in the puppet, it was a very terrifying battle strength. If it played a role at a critical moment, it could turn the situation around to a certain degree. But it was a pity. The shaman sorcerer's most advantageous puppet could no longer play a role. This witchcraft puppet was a very high-level witchcraft crystal. Each puppet needed a large amount of time, resources, and energy to be refined. The witchcraft puppet's battle strength was around the 8-9th awakened soul layer, but its witchcraft curses were enough to kill a true spirit cultivator. The 2,000 puppets were the accumulation of the green country shamans over several generations. Just like how the green protectors were important to the gnomes, the puppets were the foundation of the shaman priests. Not to mention outsiders. Even the shamans themselves did not know what fatal weakness the puppets had. Before these monsters ran out of energy, they could continuously revive. If the shaman priests were to assist them in battle, they would be able to replenish the strength of the Wu puppets in time. Up until now, there was no known effective method that could restrain these troublesome fellows. The actual combat strength of these 2,000 Wu puppets was definitely not inferior to an army of 100,000. It was because they had absolute confidence in the puppets that the shaman sorcerers did not station an army in the shaman temple. Now that they were surrounded by the gnomes, their faces turned incomparably dark, and they did not know what to do. The shaman religion's perfect witchcraft puppets were easily broken by the gnomes. This was undoubtedly a heavy blow to them. The shaman religion had no other choice. They could only call back the puppets and prepare to defend the temple. The shaman temple had several enchantments and witchcraft techniques, as well as the altar. If they relied on the shaman temple to defend, the gnomes would not be able to break in so easily. Stop them. Use the shaman-shattering talisman arrows. The gnomes clearly understood the shaman sorcerer's plan. The archers in the front took out arrows covered in talismans. When the arrows left their hands, their spirit energy would activate the talisman, and each arrow would have the power to shatter witchcraft. When the puppets were hit by the gnomes' arrows, they immediately let out pitiful cries. Their bodies fell piece by piece like building blocks, finally turning into rotten meat and worms on the ground. There was no need to say. This was also Chu Tian's masterpiece. Chu Tian had taught the talisman arrays that could counter the shaman witchcraft to the gnomes, and the gnomes had created these talisman arrows specifically for the shaman sorcerers. Once the source energy array on the talisman was activated and the arrow was shot into the witch puppet's body, the talisman's energy would cut off the witchcraft connection to the witch puppet. At this time, the witch puppet would suffer a backlash from the curse and turn into minced meat with no way to recover. Like this, the shaman sorcerers had been completely countered. Damn! Marzu was filled with rage as he muttered something. The corpses of the gnomes he had killed before all gathered above his head as if they had lost gravity. Countless limbs wrapped around each other, and it was like an invisible hand was kneading dough into a ball, instantly turning it into a several-meter-wide meatball. Clark's expression slightly changed when he saw this. Be careful. He is using a high-level shaman witchcraft. The meatball floating above Marzu's head slowly turned red before turning purple. Large amounts of poison seeped out, and the meatball expanded like it was filled with air. Finally, it was thrown into the gnome's area. Clark raised the long staff with both hands, and a green light was released. Great forest god, please bestow me strength. After that, the tip of the long staff was inserted into the ground, and countless lush vines rushed out in an instant, locking the meatball in midair like a chain. These vines were filled with the green religion priest's power. Even if it was cut by wind blades, burned by flames, or smashed by boulders, they would not be able to harm it at all. However, they could only temporarily stop this terrifying witchcraft. When the emerald green vines touched the meatball, they immediately released a cursed power that corroded it, causing it to quickly wither. At this time, the meatball was already riddled with holes, and large amounts of poison was being released from it. There were cracks on the surface of the meatball, and it was clear that it was about to explode. Huh! The moment the gigantic meatball exploded, it was like a mighty sandstorm. Countless tiny pieces of meat splattered forward. Every piece of meat contained a witchcraft curse. As long as it splashed onto any living creature, it would instantly fester and die. Forest barrier. Clark was already prepared and suddenly summoned a giant green barrier in front of him. Almost instantly, the green barrier was covered in a layer of dark red. Other than the countless pieces of meat, there were also large amounts of disgusting witchcraft insects that were swimming around the barrier. The meatball exploded, and all the plants within several hundred meters were contaminated. With a speed visible to the naked eye, the poison fog that spread out formed a barrier, making it impossible for the gnomes to chase after them. As long as it covered the area, all the plants would wither, and there would be all kinds of dangerous witchcraft insects crawling over them. So powerful, Dolores saw this scene from afar. He is truly worthy of being the shaman's high priest. If this attack hit a place with a lot of people, perhaps it would kill over 1,000 people. Chu Tian was also a bit surprised. This shaman sorcerer from the Savage Highlands did have some skill. His cultivation was not lower than the 4th true spirit layer. Because witchcraft was too hard to deal with, normal cultivators of the same level would find it hard to fight him. Marzu's attack created a world for the shamans, and all the shamans immediately retreated into the temple. The green religion priests all made their moves. Countless vines and grass were injected with energy, wildly growing as if they were alive. They were like thick pythons that charged forward to attack, but they were a step too late. The sorcerers had already retreated, and the entrance to the shaman temple was protected by a barrier. The green religion priests could not directly cut it open, so the countless vines could only wrap around the altar, making it hard for the people inside to come out. Marzu, your scheme has been completely exposed, Clark loudly shouted. Don't needlessly prick us. You won't have another chance. The shaman sorcerers were trapped in the temple. Their faces were all like dead ashes. Even if they reacted slowly now, they would still understand what was going on. The shaman witchcraft had been broken by the gnomes, so the shaman plan could not be carried out. The shamans were trapped in the shaman temple, and although they could rely on the power of the temple to protect themselves, how could they stay here forever? The witchcraft that Mars had just cast was extremely powerful, but it had obviously consumed a lot of energy as well. At this moment, he was panting heavily, and his eyes were filled with frustration and anger. Hateful half-elf, hateful Clark. If I catch him, I'll torture him to death bit by bit with 10,000 wizard Gus. A green-skinned orc priest came over. High priest, the green religion priests have already sealed the temple, and we can't use witchcraft outside. What should we do now? Things have already reached this point. We can't just sit here and wait for death. Marzu said with a dark expression. First we'll use the altar to recover our strength, and then we'll kill our way out. We'll let them understand that the shaman sorcerers are not easy to deal with. Luz, you'll lead the charge in a bit, and I'll cover you. Priest Luz thought about it for a few seconds. I have an idea that might be more beneficial to our situation. Marzu looked at his assistant. Tell me about it. We can. Luz walked to Marzu's side and prepared to speak. A colorful large centipede came out of his sleeve and shot out like an arrow, biting the old troll's neck. Kill you, and then take your head to Green City. Marzu gave a pitiful cry. This centipede was a voodoo insect that Luz had refined for many years. Even if it was an earth dragon that was bitten by it, the voodoo poison inside would cause it to fester. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.